Welcome, I'm Paul, this is Dave. You're watching my channel's monthly compendium for the month of July 2024. Enjoy. And if you're trying to sleep, you're in the right place. Case file number 1688, written by Self-Help Kelp. Vanished in sight through a flickering night. Last summer, two of my friends and I, 30s, female, were carpooling to the airport in the early hours of the morning to catch our flight. It was around 3 or 4 a.m. I was in the passenger seat, my friend was driving, and we had just picked up the third friend. We all live in the suburbs near Detroit. My friend, who was picked up last, lives only 5 or 10 minutes from the Detroit airport. We're driving down a well-lit 2-lane road. The area is well populated, and you often do see pedestrians out and about at any given hour. Anyway, as we were driving, we stopped at a red light at an intersection. Directly ahead, we see a man, looked to be in his 30s or 40s, riding a modern-day red bicycle near the edge of the road, heading in our direction. He was wearing a beanie hat, a flannel, and shorts. I don't recall his shoes, but I do remember he had a backpack on. He had longer hair that poked out from the bottom of his hat, and some facial hair from what I can recall. My friend who was driving said, "He'd better hurry, it's starting to sprinkle," which prompted me to look up from my phone and look at the man again as he was getting closer. All three of us were looking at this guy, and he was getting closer by the second. He was almost to the crosswalk directly in front of us, right under a streetlight where he started to freaking turn transparent and flicker like an old film movie on a projector. You know how sepia photos or filters look? Like warmer, muted, vintage-looking brown tones? I watched him and his bright-as-hell red bike turn from vibrant color to sepia in a millisecond, then instantly vanish into thin air. I instantly shot my head to the left to lock eyes with my friend. Both of us were in shock. Our eyes were wide and our mouths were open in utter disbelief. Our friend in the back seat was the first to process what had just happened and said, where the hell did he go? Did you guys see that? He turned see-through. Seriously, where did he go? What the hell? We all kinda let out some shrieks and freaked the hell out, all talking a mile a minute as we each quickly confirmed we had all seen the same sequence of events occur right before our eyes, under direct light. I had goosebumps and my eyes were welling up with tears because it gave me an urge to cry. I was just so tripped out about what I just saw. We all retold the story one by one, over and over again, all the way to the airport, and also continued to recount the experience until we got to our destination. We are all friends to this day, and we still talk about this event often. I think about that day any time I pass that intersection and intently watch any pedestrian I happen to see there. It is an experience I will never forget, and what ultimately led me down the Matrix rabbit hole. A simulation glitch is the only explanation for what occurred to us. It perplexes me to this day. Case file number 1689, written by Scumbag Stacy's Ex. The forest chill with a doppelganger thrill. There's a place near me that has a nice flat 4-mile walk into a big lake with a couple of lean-tos and a tent site on the shore of the lake. I go there half a dozen times a year or so. Each lean-to is about 300 yards apart, and the tent site is about 300 yards past the second lean-to. Each lean-to and the tent site has an outhouse, privy we call them, about 50 yards behind it, further from the lake. By the way, a lean-to is like a small shelter provided for free. This is state land, and it's very remote, and all first come first serve. I got to the trailhead about 4:30 last night, and there were no other cars. It was raining buckets. I don't care. I enjoy laying in my hammock in the rain. This was perfect for me since I knew my tent site would be open. I prefer sleeping in a hammock to the hard floor of a lean-to. After dinner and listening to the loons, I had a restful sleep. Woke up once at 3:30 or so to pee, slept for a few more hours. Woke up to the sound of heavy rain again, mixed with loon calls. I ate my breakfast and drank my coffee under my tarp while sitting in my hammock. I started breaking down camp and packing my pack. And as I was taking down my tarp, I got the sudden urge for my morning constitution. I'm stuffing my tarp into my pack and I look toward the trail that goes to the privy and I see a guy, dressed in the same color clothes as me. Gray rain pants and olive raincoat. Turn off the main trail and start walking away from me towards my privy. Damn it! I need to do that. Why is this guy using my privy? I really don't want to start hiking back because walking usually loosens things up more, and I don't want to crap my pants. So I'm just standing there in the freaking rain, and I had just put my tarp away. All I could think of was someone came into one of the lean-tos late last night. Maybe his buddy was using that privy, so he had to use mine. Frick. So I'm standing there a full 15 minutes, just staring at the trail to the privy, waiting for the guy to come out so I can go. Getting dumped on with rain the entire time. Finally, I'm like, frick this, maybe I missed him come out. I walk through the woods towards the privy and go in. There is nobody there, and there is no evidence of any recent use. The pit inside is not very deep, and you can see old deposits, but nothing fresh. Well, I had to go, so I made a fresh deposit. It only took me a minute or so. I hiked out past the two lean-tos, and both were completely empty. Nothing to indicate anyone was there. Hiked out in about an hour back to the parking lot, and my car was still the only one there. When I think back on it, I never made out a face on the guy. I thought it was weird he had the exact same raincoat and rain pants as me. Mine were a mixed set from two different manufacturers. Most people with rain pants have a matching jacket. As I hiked out, I became more and more convinced that I watched myself walk to the privy, then stood there like an idiot for 15 minutes in the rain. I know I didn't just imagine it. I was low-key kind of mad that this guy was using the privy at my tent site, instead of the one at his own lean-to. Case file number 1690, written by Narrow Walrus, 7926. A plane in the sky, frozen, oh my. I had an early morning meeting at work last week, so my husband and I left early that day for him to drop me off. It was so early, it was just us and two other cars on the road. We live a couple miles from an international airport and see planes coming and going all the time. We stopped at a red light and saw a full-size passenger jet coming in to land, and it even had the big brand name on the side of it. Not going to say which airline it was because I feel weird sharing this in general. It was flying towards the airport to land, but it was flying really oddly. It looked like it was too low to make it to the airport for one, and for two, the way it was moving was just weird. It was gliding and kind of bouncing, and my immediate thought was, is that a plane or a balloon? I thought I was crazy, until I heard my husband, from the driver's seat, go, is that a balloon? And we both kept watching it, and decided there was no way someone had a life-size replica balloon of a Boeing of a specific airline, flying that high in the sky near a large airport. The light turns green, the plane was heading towards us, but when we got the green, we started heading towards it, and we realized we were the ones getting closer. We ended up driving parallel to it, and we realized the plane wasn't moving, like at all anymore. It's like it was frozen in mid-air. There's sometimes an optical illusion with planes, where if you get lined up correctly with one, and are going at a certain speed, it can make the plane look like it's still. You can Google it. I forgot the name of the illusion. We decided that had to be what was happening. We rolled our windows down to get a better look. And then we realized there's no way the plane was moving, because it was dead quiet outside. Those jets, we see them all the time, and they are loud. This one wasn't making any noise at all, and not only was it not making noise, neither was anything else. The birds stopped chirping, the wind stopped. We rolled our windows back up, and I turned to my husband and was like, I don't like this. There's no way we saw what we just saw. And he agreed that there had to be an explanation. I turned around again to get a second look, and the whole plane was gone. While it is a plane, it could have taken off out of view, but silently, and in maybe a 3-second time span? This happened last week. We haven't talked about it since, but this morning I was like, can we talk about the plane thing? Like, what was that? My husband said it made him so uncomfortable, he's been trying to forget about it entirely. I'm fascinated. I have no idea what happened or what we saw, but there has to be an explanation, right? Where did all those people go? We've tried Googling, and I found nothing. I almost want to reach out on social media and see if I can find the people who were in those other two cars. But even just telling the story makes me feel like I'm crazy. Like it's one of those stories that if someone told me about it, I honestly probably wouldn't believe them. But it happened right in front of me, and I know what I saw. I'm just glad my husband saw it too. Case file number 1691, written by OK Badger 1204. The boot puzzle with a coin to unravel. Had a coin fall into my boot from a place I visited 10 years ago. I'm trying to make sense of what happened to me this morning while I was at work. I know it can't just be a coincidence. Both of those puns were intended because I use humor to cope with situations. While at work this morning, I was recycling some metal for the company I work for. I was taking lamps from the table to the recycling bin, as the metal is heavy, so I can carry one at a time. I'd already been doing this for about a half an hour when I felt like something fell into my boot. It's not an uncommon occurrence of things falling into my boots considering I don't tie them, and my jeans usually rest inside my boots. Like John Bender in The Breakfast Club, I feel it slide down my ankle and rest at the bottom of my boot and jiggle around while I finish making my lap. After tossing the metal in the bin, I take my boot off and shake out the debris that I felt fall in. As it falls in the dirt, I see that it is a coin about the size of a nickel or a quarter. I think to myself that it's strange because I didn't have any change on me that day, as I haven't used cash in a few weeks. I pick up the coin and I realize that it's neither a nickel or a quarter. It's a 20-cent coin from Bank Negara, Malaysia. My mind kind of froze when I picked it up. What in the actual hell? Why, how, when, what? I live in the US and visited this place probably 10 years ago, almost to this day. I had a weekend port visit there when I was in the Navy on deployment. I did keep a couple of coins from the places I visited, because it was just change that was left over from the trip. But that was 10 years ago. Plus, all of my change I collected from them is in my storage unit, and haven't dealt with it in years. I'm so baffled about what happened that now I can't even focus at work. I need some kind of opinion or outside perspective that I can't think of as to what just happened. The boots I wear are military-like, but not the same pair from them. I bought them about 4 years ago. Case file number 1692, written by Spetsy, 55. Dr. Dan, the Plague Man. My son brought home the plague from school, and after 3 weeks of vomiting, I went to the doctor. I'm in Australia, so it's not as expensive here. Because it was an emergency appointment, I did not have the possibility to pick my doctor, so the doctor I was seeing for the day was Dr. Dan. I walk in. Yes, I'm sick, but I also drove to this appointment and had been at work earlier in the day, so I'm not on death's door. And there sits a young white Australian man who did an absolutely excellent job, and off I went home, with a bunch of antibiotics. When I get home, my husband has also succumbed to the plague, and I highly recommend Dr. Dan. I tell my husband all about Dr. Dan, and the next day, he makes an appointment and goes. Imagine my surprise when my husband came back with a bunch of antibiotics and a story to tell. He then proceeds to tell me that while Dr. Dan is indeed fantastic, he is not white, he is not young, he's middle-aged, and he is not Australian. In fact, he is of Indian descent. Guys, I'm telling you, I would have gone to court and testified under oath that Dr. Dan was a young white Australian guy. I even looked on their website at the doctors that are available. They have a picture of each doctor on their website, and there was Dr. Dan, a man of Indian descent, middle-aged, and with a darker complexion. I have never hallucinated in my life, and although I was sick, I wasn't that sick, so I have no explanation. That is the one and only thing of its kind to ever happen to me. All I know is Dr. Dan was awesome, and had me back up and running within 3 days. I also asked reception if there was a student doctor or a fill-in doctor at the time, and they said no. It was only ever Dr. Dan. Something else I remembered that I will prove it was the same doctor as my husband and I saw, was that when my husband went in, he said to the doctor, "My wife was in yesterday and she was given antibiotics. I'm feeling sick with the same thing I imagine, so I'll need them too." To which Dr. Dan said to my husband, "Yes, I remember your wife, she was quite sick." So that kind of proves it was the same guy, at least to me it does. Okay, so I also have looked on my antibiotics package, and the same with my husband's, and both were prescribed by Dr. Dan. I have also looked at my Medicare history, and it shows both my husband and I claim history. We are on the same card. The latest two were both for an appointment with Dr. Dan. Both of these things prove it was the same person. Case file number 1693, written by Character Educator 96. Gazebo gone? It's a backyard phenomenon. This must have happened when I was 16 or 17 years old. I just asked my old friend about it the other day to confirm whether I was crazy or not, and if I'm remembering things incorrectly. She confirmed everything. One day, I was at my friend's house, typical detached home in southern Ontario. Each backyard had fences as the homes were surrounded by each other. My friend had a huge, fully set up gazebo in our backyard. It was set up properly and had been there for quite some time with no issues. We were in the basement one spring or summer afternoon. Weather was sunny, warm, normal. and I heard a loud bang come from upstairs. Naturally, we ran up and asked her mom what the noise was, to which she replied that she wasn't sure. Eventually, we all ended up looking out the upstairs window in her mom's bedroom, which allowed us to see both her and her next door neighbor's backyard, to the left. We were in shock. Her humongous, full-size gazebo had somehow levitated and landed perfectly straight and normal in her neighbor's backyard. It makes no sense. I googled that residential fences in my area are 6 to 8 feet tall. It wasn't a small item like an umbrella that could just pick up in the wind and land. Like, even if it somehow fully levitated, it shouldn't have landed in perfect condition. No one remembers it even being remotely windy that day. This was freaking weird. My friend and I are still shaken about it to this day and don't understand it one bit. Crap could have been in the news for sure. Case file number 1694, written by It's Garden Time, Nerd. When lost and found, my jaw hit the ground. In summer 2021, I bought a jewelry box at an estate sale. Since college, I'd been keeping my jewelry, hair stuff, etc. in one of those little plastic drawer sets you buy at Walmart, and it was time for an upgrade. I moved over the jewelry I wear most often, and left the rest in plastic drawers. Prior to all this, years ago, my high school boyfriend had bought me the very generous gift of a necklace and earring set from the Swarovski Museum while he was on a trip to Austria. A sparkling green crystal shell on a turtle-shaped silver pendant with matching round crystal studs. I was very disappointed to lose one of the earrings just a couple years later. I wore the remaining stud by itself a few times, opposite a small hoop. I tried to wear it in my cartilage piercing, but that was a no-go since the post was too thick and it hurt. I combed through those plastic drawers so many times over the years, just in case. After moving among a few states and even more residences, it was more of a habit than anything. I knew it wasn't there. Back to present-ish. On some certain day in early 2022, after several months' use of the jewelry box, I found myself unenticed by its contents, and turned to the plastic drawers to see if I could find any more interesting earrings. A green crystal stud caught my eye in the drawer, and I thought to myself, hang on, didn't I just see this in the jewelry box? Didn't I? I picked up the earring, turned around, and looked back in the jewelry box. Lo and behold, there was the green earring, sitting in the box, its twin in my hand. There were two of them. This was impossible, and yet two. I put them right in, eyes wide, and went to work. That night I was hesitant to take them off, worried that one might disappear while I slept. When I awoke, both remained on my bedside table, and I'm very pleased to report that they have stayed together ever since. Case file number 1695, written by Blatino13, Reality Blip and a Headphone Trip. This is the most crazy experience I've ever felt, and it's so unbelievable I experienced this phenomena this intense. Basically, I ordered some Apple headphones on April 25th, 2023 from Walmart Express. I lost my headphones the day prior. Usually a bad habit, I chew on my wired headphones because it has a plastic rubbery piece that connects the left and right wire so they don't go flying everywhere. I usually listen to my music and chew away on the rubber. It's truly a delicacy. When I got my headphones delivered, I was delighted by how fast Walmart Express ships, but I was soon disappointed because they had no chewy piece to chew on. I investigated the headphones very thoroughly. There was no plastic piece on these Apple headphones in particular to stop the left and right wires from flying all over. This headphone I received had that feature built into the wires, if that makes sense. Like there were slots in the actual wires that connected them to each other. Regardless of this design, I figured Apple made a newer generation of headphones, or I had just an ancient version. So throughout the day, I'm using my brand new headphones, and then towards the night, my heart dropped. It was a morbid feeling, because I had realized that in that moment, I was unconsciously chewing on my headphones the same way I chewed on my old ones. The chewy piece was there now. I swear to God, I checked the headphones up and down. There was no plastic piece on these. Now I'm questioning reality. I can swear on my life that the headphones were built differently just hours prior. Now I have an entire different but similar set of headphones. What is really going on, y'all? I'm a pretty rational person, so this is very different for me to accept. But I know for a fact that it happened, and is now forcing me to believe in parallel realities, or at least some type of simulation that we're inside of. Or if a human affair like CERN is interfering with our reality, and I'm noticing it, I can't tell. I'm even having lucid telekinetic dreams lately. I'm obsessed with this now, because I feel like I witnessed something that no one else ever has. This feels so weird, I don't know what's real anymore. I can't be the only one experiencing these subtle changes lately and recognizing them in the Matrix, am I? You're not. Case file number 1696, written by Demona Drash, Enigma Revealed in the Ring That Time Concealed. A few years ago, I found a beautiful tanzanite and diamond ring on sale at a jewelry shop. I was able to do a layaway plan over 4 months and finally brought it home. It's the most expensive piece of jewelry I've ever owned, and I love this ring. At the time, the ring fit perfectly. However, about a year ago, I needed to resize it as I'd put on weight. I put it back in its box and bag, took it to my car, and placed it in the glove compartment while I ran some other errands. I ended up having to go home before I made it to the jewelry shop, so I left the ring in the car, parked in a garage, and planned to take it in next time I was out. 2 days later, I pulled up at the jewelry store, and when I went to get out the ring out of the glove compartment, it wasn't there. I tore the car up looking for it. It's nowhere. I go home and check everywhere just to be sure, but the ring is gone. The only thing I can think of is that someone got into my car during my errands and took it. Over the last year, I've cleaned and vacuumed my car several times, always hoping I would somehow find the ring. About 3 months ago, I even bought a smaller, cheaper version I found, just because it was tanzanite. But it was not as nice as the original ring. 4 days ago, I hopped in my car and guess what is sitting on the passenger floorboard? The bag with my ring, packed up and ready for the jeweler, with the original receipt and everything. I have absolutely no idea where this ring could have been for the last year. No clue how it could have been possible to miss it in the meantime. I tore this car apart multiple times looking for it, cleaning. It's like it somehow just moved forward in time. No one else drives my car. Case file number 1697, written by Dream Girl. We were locked outside while our keys took a ride. This happened around 5 years ago, on my niece's first birthday. My mom, my sister, my other niece, let's call her M, and I were set to go to the party. We all left the house at 5 p.m., locking both the house and the gate from the outside. The gate's lock is one of those that won't release the key until it's securely locked. Our house gate is unusually tall, floor to ceiling, so nothing can be passed over it. The distance from the gate to the house's main door is about 30 meters. Now here's the strange part. When we returned home, we needed to unlock the gate to park the car inside. I had the house and gate keys on a single key ring, which also included all the keys to the doors inside the house. Losing them would be a disaster. I distinctly remember putting the keys in my purse because their weight was noticeable. However, no matter how hard I searched, I couldn't find the keys. We scoured the car, thinking they might have fallen inside, but still found nothing. We concluded that they might have been lost at the party venue, so my sister and her husband went back to search for them, as those keys were crucial. Meanwhile, my mom, Em, and I stayed outside the house, still trying to locate the keys. It was past 9 p.m., and it was dark inside the house and beyond the gate. I usually carry a small flashlight in my purse, which Em borrowed to peer through the gate's grills. The gaps were tiny, not even wide enough for a child's finger. Em noticed a glint near the house's main door. We both focused on it with the flashlight and my phone's light, and to our surprise, it was the keys we had been searching for. We showed them to my mom, who initially thought I must have dropped them earlier. However, she quickly realized this was impossible, since the key must be removed from the lock only after securing the gate. When my sister and her husband returned, having found no keys at the venue, we showed them the keys inside the gate. They were as baffled as we were. Ultimately, we had to break the gate's lock to get inside the house and retrieve the keys from about 30 meters away. Case file number 1698, written by Erwixna, Wedding Pics and Universe Tricks. So 3 weeks ago, I went to a wedding with my boyfriend and his friends. There was one of those photo booths there, and we all took some photos. There were 8 strips of photos, 2 copies of 4. I ended up taking all the copies home, as he had asked me to, and we agreed that I'd give them to him when I saw him again. The following week, I went over to his house. Since I'm one of those people that packed the night before, I put the photos in my bag so I wouldn't forget them. One of the copies had actually gotten oil on them from some food, so I made sure to give them the nice ones and pack them quickly so nothing else would get on them. I was kinda talking out loud, so my flatmate, who did not attend the wedding but also knows him and saw the photos, knew what I was doing. The next day I saw my boyfriend. I took the photos out of my bag before I did anything else. I put them on his bed and sat down after that, and he smiled at me in this really specific way, which is why I remember it really vividly. He was happy to get them, and we went on about our day. 2 days ago, I was actually thinking about those photos because I realized I wasn't sure where to put my copies. Then they were just right next to me. I counted my photos and realized I had an extra. 5, not 4. And I was confused because I had thought I had given him all 4, but maybe I had forgotten to give him the 1. Well, today, 3 weeks later, he told me that I never gave him the photos. Like he literally just told me right before I'm starting to type this. He said it so casually, just asked me when he'd get them. Well, here I am, absolutely confused because I remember giving him the photos. I remember the memory exactly as I described it here. Sure enough, I look over, and all 8 copies are right next to me. I kinda just froze and asked my flatmate about the day I gave him the photos. She tells me that yes, I did give them, that she remembers me packing them, that when I came home, I'd even told her that he'd been happy when he got them. But here they are in front of me, all 8 copies, and apparently I never gave them? Now I'm just really confused. My flatmate and I are the only ones who remember the fact that I gave them. And before anyone asks, no, this isn't a prank of some kind. My flatmate and boyfriend are not those types of people. And they don't talk much except for when he visits me. He's not gaslighting me about the fact that I didn't give them, because all the photos are literally on my bed as I type. He genuinely doesn't remember that happening because here it never happened. So I took a break from writing this for a bit, to do other things. Turns out I have 9 photos now. One of the photos doesn't have a copy. In my memory it did. But that would mean that I had 10 photos at some point, so now I'm extra confused. Case file number 1699, written by No Audience 6195. Dinner's done, but the night has just begun. It was a school night, and our family had just had dinner. Rice-a-roni, meatloaf, and green beans. I hated it. Anyway, about an hour or so passes, and I head upstairs to bed. Now, to get upstairs, we have 2 stairways. One leads to the kitchen, the other is a living room, which then has the staircase to the bedrooms. I take the staircase leading from the foyer to the living room. As I head up the staircase, I see my little brother, around 5 at the time, run from his room to the bathroom, both located on each side of the top of the staircase leading up from the living room. I say out loud, "Man, you better get to bed before you get in trouble." When suddenly, my little brother comes upstairs from the staircase from the foyer to the kitchen, a floor beneath me, and then passes me and says, "Good night." Then proceeds to go upstairs and then go to his room and close the door. I stand there frozen. If my brother was downstairs, then who did I see that ran from his room to the bathroom? Why did I think it was my brother? Or maybe I'm overthinking it, and my brother just has super speed. All jokes aside, I was so freaked out I ran upstairs past the bathroom, without looking to see what could have been in there, and went into my room and closed the door. I waited that whole night for a face. It never came. But this night stuck with me for a while. Any theories on what it could have been? Would you like my weekly and monthly compilations completely ad-free? If so, check out the link in the description to my Patreon, where for $3 a month, you can get them all completely ad-free. Case file number 1700, written by Every Man a Wild Cat. Golf Surprise with Barry's Timely Rise. It was 2006, I think. I was 16. My dad and I played golf together a lot. Usually at least once a week. We played an unfamiliar course one day, due to booking late and availability issues. We're from the Kansas City metro area, which most of you probably know lands right on the Kansas and Missouri state line. We're from Kansas, and typically play near where we live in the suburbs. But as I said, this particular day, we were forced to play a long way from our house, probably 20 miles, and on the Missouri side. So we get paired with a third guy. His name is Barry. He's a nice old guy, probably 65 or 70, tall, had a bucket hat. Well, that day, I was slicing the ball really bad, forcing me to lose a lot of shots into the woods on the right. I remember my dad had gifted me some really quality golf balls recently, and I put about 5 or 6 in the woods and was really beating myself up about it, despite his insistence that it's part of the game and there's no reason to be upset. So fast forward to the end of the round. We say our goodbyes to Barry, and as I'm packing my bag into the car, I noticed Barry slipped a few sleeves of new golf balls into my bag. I almost cried. It was such a thoughtful and willy old guy move. My dad was incredibly appreciative of the gesture. I think we tried to wave him down to say thanks as he pulled out, but he was gone. The next week, my dad hurt his back at the gym or work, I can't remember. and we took the rest of the summer off golf. Fast forward almost 10 months, we're finally playing our first round back together, and we booked a tee time at one of our favorite courses, much closer and more familiar to us. On the way there, I said to my dad, "Hey, wouldn't it be weird if we got paired with Barry again?" He just kinda looked at me with an odd expression and was like, "Well, yeah, that would be weird." He definitely thought it was just a really off-the-wall question. I mean, it was. We were playing a completely different course, on a different day of the week, completely different time of day, essentially all things that would decrease the odds of getting paired with someone you've played with before. But there he was, on hole 1, with our same tee time. He pulled up behind us on the first tee box, and my dad fainted. I think he asked me if I coordinated that as a joke, which obviously I hadn't. He went on to explain to Barry how I had asked how weird it would be if we played with him today, and how he thought that was such a weird thing to even think about, let alone voice. He explained how this was our first round back since the last time we'd played with him, and then get this, it was Barry's too. He was a regular golfer like we were, but for some reason, he hadn't played since the exact last day we played together either. We went on to have a perfectly fine and normal round of golf. I think he put more balls in my bag when I wasn't looking, though I didn't lose as many this time. And I think my dad got his business card. Insurance salesman, maybe? We joked about how we needed to stick close to this man, because it seemed like fate that he was paired with us twice. If my dad was still alive, I bet he'd have that business card somewhere. I kinda wonder what old Barry is up to. I suppose you could chalk this up to the ultimate coincidence. But the amount of things working against coincidence is hard to buy. The time between these incidents, the fact that they were both our most recent golf outings, despite all parties being regular golfers, the courses being in completely different cities, 20 miles apart, and obviously the fact that I speculated at the very possibility. That is the most bizarre part to me. Case file number 1701, written by AGB5's Ocean, Anna's Necklace Bond from the Beyond. So I had been friends with this girl that I met on the internet since I was 12 years old. When we were 16, we finally got the chance to meet in person and spend a week together in a cabin. When we met, she gave me this handmade stone necklace. That necklace meant a lot to both of us, so I never once took it off. Fast forward about 6 months, I got close with a new group of friends, junior year of high school. They became my best friends, and still are to this day. One of the girls, Anna, Mom had passed away unexpectedly before I got the chance to meet her. There was this railroad track bridge we used to jump off all the time after school. The first time I was about to jump, I felt my neck and worried that the necklace would fall off. I told myself it would be fine, and I would just put it in my bag after I got out of the water. I jumped and immediately felt my neck after coming up. The necklace was gone, and I was pretty bummed about it. Fast forward another 6 months. I walk into Anna's grandma's house, and the necklace is strung around her mom's urn above the fireplace. I lost my crap. I asked everyone who was in the house in the past 6 months if they put it there. Everyone said no. They thought one of us had put it there. While I was attempting to find out who put it there, we discovered that I received that necklace on the same exact day Anna's mom died, down to the same hour of the day. I never met her, but I have dreams a lot where she's trying to talk to Anna through me. Since then, my dad passed away, the same way she did. Substance overdose. Anna has a lot of dreams where my dad talks to me through her, even referencing things that only he and I have talked about. Not sure exactly what is making all of this possible, but I'm happy that it is. Case file number 1702, written by Luckless Lemmings. Barnyard Bliss or Dusk's Mystical Abyss. It's pretty much the only uncontrolled intrusion into my waking life I've ever experienced. I was playing in the region band in high school, having completed and won a place in the band. I played euphonium, was second chair, and was kicking myself for not getting first. C'est la vie. They got a well-known band composer to direct for us. His name was band director, and much like a professor will assign all the books he wrote inside his own classroom, the director assigned all of his pieces, save maybe one. You can imagine how painstakingly we went over each song. They were his children. One song really stuck with me in particular. It is called Dusk. The melodies were simple, but the harmonies are some of the most powerful I've ever heard. Slowly, it started to piece together as we practiced it. The day before the concert, we were finishing up the song, adding different stylistic notes here and there. After that was finished, he wanted us to play it through a couple times. I became lost in the music, even as I was playing along. It was simply powerful. And then the next thing I knew, I was no longer in the band hall. I was in a barn with my bare feet on the dirt floors. Every sense told me that the barn was real, even more real than the band hall where I was, because I was taking in all 5 senses at once. The air was cool, almost chilly, and everything felt lighter and cooler than it had before. I could feel my heart beating, not panicked or rapid, but strong. I reached out a hand to the door in the side of the barn, not the large ones, but the normal ones on the opposite sides. The walls were old wood, with cracks that allowed some reddish sunlight in. I opened the door, and the first thing I noticed was a woman with long blonde hair, sitting on the ground outside, facing away towards the sunset, which was straight ahead of me. I knew her. My gaze turned up towards the sunset, where she was looking. The sun was already past the edge of the world, so it was only red soaking the sky. But the most incredible thing to me was the wind. It cascaded incredibly powerfully throughout the wheat, which was stretched out as far as I could see. Endless stalks just waving back and forth. It came, and it's hard to describe this. The wind wrapped around me. It was cold and yet so good to be in. It brought a sharp life, like taking a deep breath after you've been underwater for as long as you can. I can't remember if I stayed out there watching the view for minutes, or if I came back within seconds. Still, there's almost no words to describe this. I've tried my best to do so. The whole experience happened within a few bars of the song. I believe I even continued playing while experiencing this for a bar or two. All I know is that if there is a heaven, I wouldn't be one bit disappointed if that was it. A few questions remain. I've never experienced anything like this before or since, at least during my waking hours. I have had strange instances also when I'm sleeping, although many things could be explained away. I completely understand that this could just be my imagination, but that's still saying something, isn't it? Isn't it amazing where your mind can take you if you just give it a chance? Unless we're careful to experience things, we may just see more worlds in our sleep and waking dreams than we ever do in real life. Case file number 1703, written by Alternative Sand 771. Johnny's Echo with a time travel memo. So as a bit of a backstory, I'm a boarding school counselor. I work with teens around 16. I've been working at it for 3 years now. Around 10 years back, I was around 20. I lived in the same city, not too far from the boarding school. One day, as I was working in retail, this kinda emo-looking teen walks in and instantly recognizes me. He called out my name, something along the lines of, "Oh my god, Liz, I didn't know you work here." Now I'm a person who has really good facial recognition, even though I'm terrible with names. But I had no idea who this kid was, so I just told him he must have gotten it wrong. He initially laughed like I was playing a joke on him and said something like, "Yeah right, it's me, Johnny. Do you have amnesia or something?" In a way that felt like he was really familiar with me. But when he realized I was serious, he got so disappointed and looked actually hurt, like there was no way I didn't know him, but didn't insist and just got what he came for and left. It really stuck with me for years because I felt so bad that I didn't recognize this kid that seemed really happy to see me and even knew my name. I was also sure I'd see him again since most people coming to shop there are locals. I wanted to ask him where he thought he knew me from, but I never did. It just struck me as really odd. A few weeks back, one of the kids had to leave boarding school since his family decided to move abroad. And since this is a very high demand boarding school, some days later, a new kid joined our group instead of him. Lo and behold, it's Johnny. Same kinda emo look, same name, same way of talking. I know it sounds like something years could distort, but I have no doubt it's the same kid. I remembered his name and look since I wondered about it every once in a while since. This, however, shouldn't be possible since he would have been around 10 years ago. We also grew really close really fast, since we have a very similar background. I'm honestly just waiting for the day he comes back to school and says he saw me working in the store. Case file number 1704, written by Perception OK 2758, The Hallway Glitch and a Mystery Switch. I've lived in my home for 10 years and decorate our foyer wall for every season and holiday. So like 40 times at a minimum that I've worked on this wall. It's a prominent but small wall, only 6 feet wide, and faces the front door. I'm a perfectionist and stress over things being centered, straight, balanced. So I go to change out the wall hanging and I'm centering it. But now there's a second light switch on the wall, one on the left and now one on the right. And it's not the same distance from the edges as the ones on the left, so it throws off things looking centered. If I had this problem every season and holiday for 10 years, I'd remember. I have a ton of pics of the wall from all of my decorating, and sure as hell, it's all in the same pics, and now everything looks off-center? Gets even weirder though. The switch turns on the upstairs hall light. Just last week, the upstairs hallway light stopped working, and I haven't gone around to changing the bulb. But it apparently wasn't the bulb because when I flipped the new switch, the hallway light came on. There's only one light in our house that has 2 switches that control it and have to be on for it to work. Never in 10 years has the upstairs hallway light not worked, and it has not been the bulb. I never had to explain to the kids about 2 switches for the hall light, like the one downstairs. So not only do I have a new light switch, but someone also randomly flipped it for the first time in 10 years, the same week I discovered it. It's just me and my adult son in the house, and I haven't even had company in forever. My son doesn't remember the switch either. It's right in the foyer, right when you walk in. This whole thing gives me this weird feeling. Like maybe I have some faint weird memory of it being there, but it also shocked me that there's a sensation like that switch has come and gone over the last 10 years. But I 100% know I've never used that switch and never had a time that changing the bulb upstairs didn't make it work again. Not once have I ever said, the hallway light isn't working. Must be the downstairs switch. Not once, not ever. How was the first time I noticed it also the same week it's flipped and affects the light upstairs? So freaking weird. Case file number 1705, written by 1234. Strange apparition and a mother's impossible vision. This happened a few months ago. In early January, my wife and I were in the kitchen, prepping lunch and chatting. Our 5-year-old daughter was in the living room watching TV. No one else in the house. We live in a 2-bedroom apartment, and the layout of the house allows us to see a bit of the corridor and the hallway outside of the kitchen door. My wife was cutting up food, and I was sitting behind her. As we talked, she started to turn around to face me, but stopped midway, staring at the kitchen door. She froze up completely, and I remember asking, "What is it?" She let out a loud gasp, and then I instinctively looked towards the door as well. I saw a brief glimpse of what seemed like a person turning the corner towards the living room. It happened very fast, but I was sure I saw someone. I panicked. My immediate thought was, holy hell, someone broke in, my daughter's in the living room. The only thing I thought of doing was grabbing a knife and yelled at my wife to call the police. I rushed into the corridor and into the living room. In the living room, there was nothing. My kid was just sitting on the couch, watching Bluey. She looked at me and asked, "What's up?" with a confused expression. Mind you, I had a knife in my hand and probably looked crazy. I tried to play it off and asked if she saw anyone come in the room. She hadn't, and was clueless about what I was talking about. I searched the living room and the rest of the house. No sign of a break-in, windows closed, and we live on the 3rd floor. If someone had tried to escape that way, they would have fallen really bad. I checked everywhere, wardrobes, behind curtains, the front door, nothing. No signs of entry, and the front door was totally closed. We didn't hear anyone come in or anything of the sort. This all happened within maybe 10 minutes. I went back to the kitchen, where my wife was crying. She had frozen up and didn't call the cops. I calmed her down. She got scared bad, and she couldn't even speak properly. When she calmed down, she explained to me what she saw. I personally only caught a very quick glimpse of the thing turning around the corner. However, my wife says she got a good look at it. She says she saw what looked like a tall woman, dressed in a floral dress and high heels, walking across the corridor. Neither of us heard any sound though. She said the woman stopped when she understood she was seen, looked at my wife in the eyes, and my wife swears the figure looked like our daughter, but older. This happened in the space of seconds when she first froze up in shock. When my wife gasped, the woman hurried and turned the corner into the living room. I only saw that last part. If I hadn't caught a glimpse of it, I would ask my wife to go into therapy or something. But I know something was there. We never figured out what we saw, but it was definitely the strangest moment of my life. I know it happened. Case file number 1606, written by Irrelevant Zillennial, Geocache Glitch or Time Twisting Hitch. My dad and I like to go geocaching. If you're not familiar, geocaches are small containers hidden in public areas, usually with a logbook and sometimes small trinkets inside. You upload the GPS coordinates to a website with some information about the cache. Then people will look for them, sign the logbook, and maybe trade out trinkets. There's an app now that adds some functionality. Ability to add photos, notes, hints, that kind of thing. We go to look for a specific cache one day. We look everywhere, but can't find it. Frustrating, but it happens. We go back a week or two later, can't find it. It's been marked as found semi-recently. Otherwise, we would just assume it had gone missing. Happens sometimes. We finally give up and go elsewhere to find a couple other caches. A couple weeks later, we're out caching and decide to go back to try one more time. I check the app and see it was found since we last tried. We look around for a long time, use a hint left by the most recent finder, and finally find it. I pull out my pen to mark the log, and when I unfurl it, the world stops for a moment. Because I see my dad's and my name written at the very end of the log, in my handwriting. I call my dad over and we're looking at it together. We're both confused and freaked out. I take a look again at the app and realize that the last find was from our account, and the hint we followed was one that we had left for ourselves. It's been years and we still talk about it some. It's one of those things where, no matter how many people I tell this story to, I kind of assume people don't believe me because it's just so weird. And such an obvious merging of timelines. So it's nice to talk to my dad about it, because I know 100% he believes me. I think we looked at the dates and our first find was on the date that we had last looked for it, prior to the second find. But we both definitely would not have forgotten finding it, because it had been driving us crazy wondering where it was. Honestly, I'm not sure why we didn't just chalk it up to a cache that had gone missing. We both just couldn't stop thinking about it. I also don't know how I didn't notice the username from the recent find was our username until after we found the cache. Case file number 1707, written by Blue-Eyed Magic, Candy's Reflection, and the Time Connection. So back in the early 90s, I worked as a bartender in a hotel lounge. People would occasionally call me Candy, and when I said that wasn't my name, they would say that I had a twin. My twin, named Candy, was a nurse at the local hospital. Now, I have heard about people looking so alike that they could be twins, but I was pretty sure I didn't look like this woman. I have a very distinct look. One day I'm tending bar and a guy calls my name, and I turn around to take his drink order. This man is sitting at the bar with me. I was looking at myself. Absolutely identical, from hairstyle and color to my eyes and very distinct nose. I mean, it was as if I was looking into a mirror, all except the clothes. She was in scrubs. I felt so odd. It was like an out-of-body experience. I remembered vaguely something about seeing your doppelganger causing a paradox, and that one of you had to go. The woman didn't say a word. She looked as perplexed as me. The guy ordered the drinks. I turned to the prep area and fixed the drinks. When I turned back, they were gone. I figured that this woman must have been the woman named Candy that I had been mistaken for. But man, when people said I had a twin, I never thought it would actually be my twin in the same town that I moved to. I double-checked, and my mom, as far as I know, did not give birth to twins. Even weirder part of this whole thing is that I ended up moving to a different town, becoming a nurse. I wonder if I didn't see my future self that day in the bar. Case file number 1708, written by Milo5432, Lip Gloss and Shopping Chaos. I was just in Dollar General shopping for some items. I placed my purse in the front of the compartment where I usually place it. I shopped around for like 15 minutes, picking up some random items I was shopping for. Some of them include different makeup items, specific lip gloss, shades, eyeshadow colors, etc., body soaps and specific bath bomb scents that I had picked out, some snacks and candies along with some grocery items. There's about 15 to 20 items total. So I go to the self-checkout and scan everything in my cart and bag it, then go to grab my purse. It's not there. I freak out for a minute, thinking maybe I took it out. Did I leave it in one of the aisles? Or second-guessing myself, I thought, Maybe I never brought it in the first place? So I tell one of the associates at the checkout counter that I may have left my bag in one of the aisles and asked him, can I leave my bag of scanned items at the self-checkout stand? Then I scanned for my purse in the aisles I went in before. I literally walk a few feet away and see another cart sitting right around the corner with my purse in it in the front compartment. The cart is full of the same items that I had just scanned and placed into my bag from the other cart, the one I brought up to the checkout with me. Literally all the same items down to the same shades of lip glosses, eyeshadows, same exact soaps and candies and groceries. I started freaking out and pulled this cart over to my other one at the self-checkout just to compare the items because I was just in a state of disbelief. And it's all the same items that I had just scanned. I just don't get it. How were those two carts full of my exact items that I had picked out? And how had I ended up with the other cart without my purse in it when I got to the self-checkout, when I never stepped away from my cart while I was shopping? I mean, if I had accidentally grabbed someone else's cart in the aisles and brought that one up instead of my own, that would make sense. But this cart I ended up with had all the same items that my other one had, down to the lip gloss shades and everything. Case file number 1709, written by Aramasi, Randy and Lily, and the unopened box of eternal mystery. When I was younger, most likely 6 or 7 years old, I can distinctly remember playing with a few of the other children in my neighborhood, doing things like drawing with chalk and playing tag, simple games that we played in our cul-de-sac. The little boy and girl I played with, I still can remember, in detail. The boy's name was Randy, and the girl we called Lily. Randy was light-skinned and had dark hair, while Lily had bright red hair and darker skin. I was dark-skinned and dark-haired. Physical attributes aside, both of them were very boisterous, and we all loved to run around and play until the sun started setting and my mom called me in, and then the both of them would run back to their houses until the next time we were out to play. It was a sweet little friendship, and it was pretty normal, except for a few things. When we would draw with chalk, both Randy and Lily's favorite things to draw were these little symbols with random words after them. I now realize that those symbols were very close to some symbols I had seen, but for the life of me could not remember where. And I can remember some of the words they wrote having to do with terms that I still do not recognize. My mom would come out with juice boxes sometimes when we were drawing, and laugh at my friends' cute made-up language. One morning, I went out to play with my friends, only to find them sitting on the curb, sulking. When I asked them why they were sad, they simply told me that they had to leave because, and I quote, "We've got to go back to 2137. I asked them where that was, and they said it was later. They told me to sit right there and wait a minute, so they could bring me something to remember them by. I did what they told me, and soon enough they had returned, bearing what I have chalked up to the strangest gift I have ever been given to date. They were a little rainbow hairbrush that sparkled, a small unmarked tube of what I was informed was lotion, and a small box that looked as though it was carved out of a gem. They handed me my gifts, which I promptly tried out, brushing my hair and using some of the lotion on my wrist. So they knew I wasn't going to throw them aside, and they hugged me, before running back into their respective houses. My memory cuts out at this point, but the next thing I remember was waking up, sleepily rubbing my pale-skinned hands across my face to brush away my bright red hair, going to ask my mom if Randy and Lily had left. My mother had no idea who I was talking about. Our neighbors had no children. She did not remember me being born with dark skin and dark hair. No one did. That was the day that Randy and Lily disappeared from the face of the earth, leaving me with an unfamiliar, new appearance, a tube of hand lotion, a tiny comb, and a glittery little box that sits on my mantle to this day, and which I still have no idea how to open. Case file number 1710, written by Doll Part 6, Demonic Growl in the Night When Forest Lasers Take Sight. In 2007, a few of us went investigating in Belanglo State Forest, a 4,000-hectare forest in Australia, the site of 7 murders by serial killer Ivan Milat in the 1990s. More undiscovered bodies are still believed to be there. We were with a woman who was an alleged psychic, and she led us to a remote spot where she believed some of the many murders occurred. It is approximately 2:30 a.m. We're in a dense forest, kilometers away from the nearest highway, in the middle of absolute nowhere, when we hear a loud growl of some kind emerge from deep within the forest. Thing is, this growl is completely inhuman, but it's not an animal either. It is indescribable, practically demonic. Then crap really starts to get weird. Suddenly, we see a red laser light surround us, circling the trees. Mind you, we are the only people there. Well, we thought we were anyway. Suddenly, somebody in the group gets the feeling it might be coming from a rifle, that somebody else is in the forest with us, watching. The eeriest feeling then sinks in on all of us, and after a momentary silence, where we are all kind of suspended in sheer, silent, terrorized thought, we suddenly crap ourselves, grab our stuff and bail. We run for our cars, throw all of our stuff in, and we get the hell out of there. Once on the highway, two of our cars are traveling relatively close together, at approximately the same speed. The driver in my car, a huge, well-built man of about 6'6", slams on the brakes before pulling over to vomit on the highway, simply out of sheer terror. After getting himself together, we start back on the road. Our other group of friends in the second car are now ahead of us up a bit on the road. The driver of the second car is a really slow driver, so we end up overtaking them. My driver friend, 6'6" dude, starts speeding, and after a while, we are well and truly in front of them. It's about 3 a.m., and there are no other cars on the road. We have not yet passed any other cars apart from our friends, who, from what we know, are still traveling a fair few kilometers behind us. What happens next just really freaks us out, as if we weren't already messed up enough by this point. Out of nowhere, we see another car in front of us. As we get closer, we see it's our friends in the second car, whom we passed about 15 minutes ago. Thing is, there is only one highway. Nobody had deviated from off the road, and we had passed no other cars along the way. There's no way in hell their car could have passed our car without the four of us seeing it. With about 8 witnesses to this story, it was definitely the strangest thing we've ever experienced. Case file number 1711, written by Anonymous 0212. The miracle turn that avoids our burn. I was late for an appointment and was speeding up a hill with a curve at the top. Right as I came around the curve, I saw there was an accident with injuries directly in front of me, taking up both lanes. Both lanes coming from the other direction had drivers that had slowed down so they could rubberneck, and people had already started to gather on the sidewalk to my right, so I couldn't get around the accident on either side. I quickly assessed that there was no way I could avoid hitting them, and knew that if I stayed tense, I would sustain worse injuries. So I shut my eyes and relaxed as much as I could, as quickly as I could, and waited for the impact, and waited. But the car kept moving. I opened my eyes to see 2 clear lanes ahead of me, and when I looked in the rearview mirror, I could see the accident behind me. To this day, I wonder what the people on the sidewalk saw. I am having an unexpectedly strong reaction to other people's identical stories. This happened when I was in my 20s. I'm now in my late-ish 60s, and I've told this story before. I've shared it in pre-social media groups. This is the first time I can remember anyone responding with the same experience, let alone so many people. I said this in a comment last night, but want to repeat it here. I think the reason I'm sitting here tearing up is because some part of me has never been 100% sure this actually happened. I mean, come on, growing up in white American culture, especially being born in 1957, how do you make sense of something like this? How could this be real? So finding out that even a relatively small number of other people have experienced the exact same thing is finally confirmation that it did indeed actually happen. I mean, the chances of me completely imagining every detail of something so specific that I had never heard of or dreamed about before, something supposedly so impossible, then finding out it happened to a bunch of other people, but never really happened to me? Clearly, that's not the case. Case file number 1712, written by Iskro. Twins in the crowd and the photograph in shroud. For context, this happened in 2010-2011 when I was 18 and my sister was 13 or 14. Our city's baseball team had won the World Series that year, and my family, mom, dad, sister, and myself, went downtown for the celebratory parade. We arrived downtown about 15 minutes before the parade began and found a decent spot to stand. Me, being an avid people watcher, began scanning the sea of people standing on the other side of the street. That's when I noticed a girl my sister's age, standing almost directly across from my sister, and I became fixated on her. She was talking to her family, but when she turned back to face the street, I couldn't believe my eyes. She looked identical to my little sister, who was standing right beside me. And I don't mean just your typical doppelganger. My sister is a skinny, white, blonde girl. So we've seen other girls who look like her over the years, and this was different. They were like mirror images of each other. She even had on the same glasses and t-shirt and the same colored jeans. The only difference was this girl's hair was pushed back, and my sister's always had her hair hanging in her face at that age. I was a bit speechless for a minute, and then got the attention of my parents and said, "That girl over there looks exactly like Brenna." Fake name. They looked, and I could see that they were also a bit taken aback by just how much they looked alike, and they agreed with me and pointed her out to my sister. As soon as my sister noticed her, the other girl noticed her at the same time, and they just stared at each other for a minute. At this point, we are all silent and just looking at this girl looking at my sister. The other girl's parents noticed us staring, then noticed my sister. Even though they didn't acknowledge us, I could tell they were thinking the same things we were. I could tell they noticed the resemblance and were weirded out. I had my digital camera with me and I discreetly zoomed in on her and even took a picture because I knew people would not believe us when we told them. The zoomed in picture was even freakier. It looked like I had just taken a photo of my actual sister. The parade started not long after, so we turned our attention to that for a moment. When I looked back across the street a few minutes later, the girl and her family were gone. We never saw them again. The other weird part of the story, which is the reason why I share it, is that I made a Facebook photo album that evening with all the pictures I took from the parade, including the picture of my sister's doppelganger, with a caption that said something like, "You may think this is Brenna, but it is not. Freaky, isn't it?" I recall receiving many comments from people who were stunned at the resemblance. A few years later, I was telling a friend about it and went to the Facebook album to show them, and the photo was gone? All of the other photos from that day are still there, except for that one. I guess Facebook could have removed it for some reason, but it didn't make sense why just that photo would have been removed. Case file number 1713, written by Kat Van Wall. Robes, Slippers, and Hilton Jitters. I got lost in a lift in the Hilton Zagreb. I was staying on the 5th floor and went up in the lift to use the swimming pool on the 10th floor. Bear in mind that I was wearing only a bikini and the hotel white toweling robe and slider slippers that they give you in your room. Went and had my swim, all good. Put back on my robe and slippers, got in the lift and hit the button marked 5. Got out when it stopped. There was a big 5 on the wall in the lift lobby, so it was clearly the correct floor. Only it wasn't. It led only to a corridor that was an L-shaped dead end. I banged on a few locked doors and shouted, "Hello?" to no avail. On the 10th floor where I'd got in, there were 2 banks of lifts, 2 rows of 3 facing each other, so I thought maybe I should have gotten into the opposite bank instead. Easy, I thought. I'll go back up to the 10th floor, pop across the lobby, and get into one of the opposite lifts. So I get back in and hit the button for 10 and go up. I get out at floor 10, only this isn't where I got in. There's no opposite bank of lifts. I think there were maybe 2 or 3, all in a line. I can see the gym and spa area where I'd been for swimming. Not the pool, but a different area was visible from here through the glazed part of a door, through which I could see a collection of gym machines. There was no one in there, no one using them, no staff, compared with the relatively busy reception where I'd gone in for the pool. I banged on this door and yelled for a bit, to no avail. Ventured along a couple of corridors, dead ends, all doors locked, no answer. I went down to level 5 in a different lift, only to find myself back in the dead-end corridor I'd come from. Went back up and then down again, trying different lifts each time. No difference. The room I'd come from, was staying in, had definitely been on level 5. I eventually went all the way down to level 1 or 0, I forget which one is ground floor in Croatia, thinking I'd just get out at reception and walk up the stairs. Nope, it was an underground parking garage. I tried each lower level, only to find more and more underground parking garages, and eventually a totally deserted reception of a building that wasn't the one I'd been staying in, or the Hilton at all. It looked like some kind of office block. So I got out there, walked out onto the street, still in my white robe and looking like a psychiatric unit escapee, walked around the corner and back into the Hilton reception from outside, trying to style it out and waltz up the stairs like I walk around Zagreb in the bathrobe all the time. My now ex-husband was wondering why I was taking so long. To this day, I'm not sure whether he believes me about what happened, and I've never been able to tell anyone else what happened without receiving looks of great skepticism. Case file number 1714, written by Snoo Macaroons 4456. Gaming Night Delight turns into a fright. Yesterday at 5 PM, I was playing the new OG map game mode on Fortnite while sitting in a Discord call with my friends. Suddenly, I received a missed phone call from a number with no caller ID. Usually, I don't answer calls from unfamiliar numbers, but I was expecting a call from a job I had applied for. Thinking it might be them, I decided to answer. Upon answering the second call from the same no caller ID number, I asked, "Hello?" The loud gunshots and sound effects from Fortnite made it hard to hear at first, so I removed my headset to listen better. The female voice on the other end sounded like my girlfriend, and her tone seemed offended when I asked who it was. To confirm it was her, I inquired about the caller ID, and the response matched how my girlfriend would react if she was genuinely confused. She asked to come over, suggesting a Lyft instead of Uber because of a $5 discount I had for the Lyft ride, and also we shared the same Lyft and Uber accounts. Despite being surprised by the accurate details, something felt off, especially since she didn't know the driver was even close by. Slightly suspicious, I bought the Lyft, but then hesitated when she asked for the money instead so she could buy it herself. This led me to consider a potential AI scam, and so I canceled the ride, especially since she had mentioned not wanting to come home with me earlier that day. Upon calling my actual girlfriend, she denied making any calls, leaving me puzzled. The bizarre encounter left me contemplating the idea of alternate realities intersecting due to her very accurate responses, as no other explanation seemed plausible. Perhaps in a different universe, or just an AI scam trying to get money from me. It was too coincidental though, and someone would have to be stalking me to know these things. I do think it's possible though, that higher versions of ourselves exist with everything we desire, wanting to be manifested through the energy we create around us. Case file number 1715, written by Tinkerbell 111. Sync, sync, think. I fairly regularly get my hair cut and colored, and I've been going to the same salon, seeing the same hairstylist for about a year now. So I visited this salon no less than 8 times, because I have had other stylists not rinse the color out thoroughly before. I am fairly vigilant about the process, as I don't want the color on my scalp longer than necessary. The hairstylist I've been seeing for the past year does an okay job, but several times I've asked her to rinse a little more in a certain area of my scalp. It feels like she misses. Because of my thoughts around the process, I've noticed several times that their black sinks don't allow the stylist to see if the water is clear or colored when the hair is in the process of being rinsed. I've thought to myself that they likely have the black sinks for their aesthetic because a white color may get stained or show dye and spots, etc. with prolonged use. On multiple occasions, I 100% remember thinking, she can't really tell if the color is out because she won't be able to see it against the black sink. Cut to yesterday. I go to get my hair done, and when it's time to rinse, she takes me to the sinks. They're all white. I noticed this right away because, as with each time before, the same thought process about the rinse is running through my mind. I say, "Oh, you've gotten new sinks." And she replies, "No, we've always had the same sinks. You must be confusing them with the black chairs." Because I'm not new to glitches, I immediately understand that is what happened, and smile to myself, not needing to bring the conversation any further with her. If you've ever experienced a glitch though, you'll know it's something that stays with you, something you want to share. Case file number 1716, written by Learn Stock, Be Informed. 4 years gone, and now it's on. I don't know how this can happen, but hear me out. 4 years ago, I lost a video game cartridge. I was playing it one day and gone the next. Turned the house upside down and never found it. Now the only people living in my house are myself and my partner. We have no kids or pets. The house is very tidy and organized. I'm kind of a freak about it. After a couple months, I accepted the game was just gone. Over the past 4 years, furniture has been moved and every part of the house was cleaned multiple times. We have a TV cabinet with a small cupboard on either side. The left-hand side is totally empty and always has been. I just have nothing to put in it, but when I'm cleaning it, I often open it just to dust inside. I have done this at least once a month, more likely every couple of weeks, for 4 years. The cupboard has remained empty. 2 days ago, I opened it up to dust, and the game cartridge was sitting on the shelf. There's absolutely no way, how? My partner was just as shocked and confused as I was. I know for sure it wasn't him who put it there, and no one else has been in our house. It seems like such a mundane and dumb glitch, but I can't explain it. Case file number 1717, written by Poster Nutbag. The echo of hello, but he didn't show. I was coming home from work one day, about 6 years ago. Nothing remotely out of the ordinary. The place I was living in at the time had a very narrow hallway that led to the also narrow back door, the door most of us use daily. There's a staging area for wiping your feet and taking off your shoes, which I'm sure is pretty normal with entrances and exits. On this particular day, I drove home, and as usual, used the back door to get into the house. When I did this, I hit something as I opened it, and was met with an audible, "Oh," in a familiar voice. I live with my landlord. This did not seem at all unusual. I just figured my landlord had gotten home a minute or so, even a few seconds before me, and was just taking off his shoes or coat or whatever in the small staging area in the narrow hallway. I closed the door, waited 30 seconds or so for him to presumably finish what he was doing, and I opened the door again. The thing is, upon doing so, there was no sight of my landlord. He wasn't in the communal kitchen or living room, nor the main floor bathroom. He would have to walk across the entirety of the house and up the stairs to get anywhere private. And I certainly didn't hear any scurrying or fast movements. Kinda weird. I went upstairs, where my landlord and other roommates' rooms are, to see if I was going crazy. The only roommate that was home was one that was known to not leave the room very often, which I could hear talking loudly to people over a voice chat, something he did often. I have a hard time believing he would have had time to even make it up from the back door to his room, jump into a voice chat, and besides, it was definitely not his voice I heard when I opened the door previously. My landlord always kept his door closed and locked, so while I couldn't directly investigate if he was in his room, there was no noises coming from it. He really wasn't there. After this cursory investigation, I went back to my room to decompress a bit after work, attributing this to me going a bit crazy or something. But to confirm my previous investigation, my landlord walked in the back door approximately half an hour later with his briefcase, coat, nice shoes. He was just getting home from work. I was immensely weirded out, and didn't even run by him at this point what I had experienced. I am sure I had opened the door and bumped into someone. I'm sure that someone was my landlord. I had heard their voices 1,000 times, but that just wasn't possible. There was no one that could have been in the doorway, and it certainly couldn't have been my landlord. Case file number 1718, written by Slice of Lemons. Dad's return, but a new voice to learn? Years ago, when I was around 18 and lived with my parents, I was sitting in the living room chatting with my mom and sister. My dad had gone out to play pool a few hours earlier. We heard the back door open, which was not visible from the living room, and continued to chat as we assumed it was my dad coming home. As soon as we heard the footfalls of the person inside the house walking towards the living room, we all paused and stared at each other, confused. My dad was a tall, heavy man and had very distinctive footfalls, and these were different. They did not have the same weight or pattern. My immediate thought was, did Dad invite someone over? Even though that's not something he ever did. As the footsteps got closer, we heard a man's voice call, "I'm home!" And I looked to my mom and sister, who both seemed as concerned as I was. The voice sounded nothing like my dad's or like anyone's voice we'd recognize. I don't think he could sound like that if he tried. I can't describe it other than it was a completely different voice, someone else's voice. My mom stood up, shaken, just as my dad rounded the corner into the living room. We just stared at him in shock. Dad, was someone else in the house? He gave me a puzzled look and asked what I meant. My mom then asked, "Whose voice was that in the house?" We asked if he was speaking in some kind of different voice, and he, baffled, said no. There was no one else in the house, and he was speaking in his normal voice. It has unsettled my mom, sister, and I ever since. It's hard to convey over text, but it was an entirely different person's voice. If it was only me who was there, I would have doubted myself, but we all had the exact same experience. It was like the universe got confused and assigned the wrong person, but corrected it at the last second. We still talk about the time that Dad came home, but it wasn't Dad. Case file number 1719, written by Capri Mum. The vase lost, leaving me star-crossed. This happened to me 3 days ago. I'm still in a shock, disbelief, slightly scared mindset. So I've lived in my current home for just 1 year this week. When I moved in, I had a small vase with fake thistle and heather in it. I had owned this vase for many years previous to this, and it had survived 3 house moves so far. It lived in various places in the new house since we moved in, either in my fireplace, on my side table, or in my hallway. It moved out of the hallway permanently, as the windowsill it was on had a leak over winter, and there was nowhere else for it to go in the hall. My 3-year-old smashed said vase around 6 months ago when she knocked it off the fireplace, and myself, my 2 eldest daughters, laughed at the old Hubba Bubba chewing gum wrappers. They had stashed them there many years previously. I actually remember saying out loud, I've had this vase since first address, I'm gutted. Circle around to this week. My 3-year-old was playing a peekaboo game on the porch with me and the other girls, and to hide from her behind the door, we had to squish up against the wall. And my oldest daughter parked her bottom on the small window ledge in the hallway. It is 60 centimeters wide and around 15 centimeters deep, if that. Nothing there. I came out of the lounge less than half an hour later to go upstairs. Sat there on the windowsill is the vase, intact, on the edge of the sill. Instantly I recoiled and shouted, "Oh my god, what is that doing there?" I was dumbfounded, but scared at the actual unknownness of it reappearing. All 4 kids came to the stairway and hallway thinking I'd seen a spider or something. Upon seeing the vase, my eldest goes, How? Mom, we literally sat there half an hour ago, and that was a smashed vase." She even repeated the gum wrapper anecdote. I have no idea how it's ended up back here. I do have small psychic tendencies, thoughts that manifest days later, knowing when people are going to pass, etc., but this has thrown my head. To stop the kids worrying, I said, "Right, let's Google the meaning of the flowers, as it has to be a sign." Sure enough, if you Google them, they bring protection, etc. Funnily enough though, this isn't the only glitch I've experienced in this house. I was cooking a cottage pie and opened the lid on the Worcestershire sauce. It spun, hit me, the stovetop, and never hit the ground. My kitchen has 2x2 meter floor space. No gaps in the kickboards or under the washer or oven are big enough. I've never found the lid to the bottle. I scoured the floors on my hands and knees. Never found it. Case file number 1720, written by Admirable Cobbler 319, The Mind's Eye Mystery and Fallible History. Several years ago, I was having a hard time with life. My mom had recently died, my dog had recently died, and I may have been going through some sort of midlife crisis. I decided to try meditation to try to get a grip on everything, but I had no idea how to meditate. Still don't. So I found a guided meditation on YouTube. The video was pretty typical, get comfortable, focus on breathing, blah blah blah. Then he says, "I want you to focus on the memory of your best day." Immediately, I remembered my best day. It was the summer after I graduated from high school. I had no adult plan and made a spur-of-the-moment decision to take a road trip. I had quite a bit of money from all the graduation gifts. My mom was not on board. She said there was no way she would allow an 18-year-old girl to drive around the US on her own. We were arguing about it, and my stepbrother's friend overheard. He offered to go with me. We talked about it for weeks, and begrudgingly, my mom gave permission. The first few days were awkward. I knew this boy, but didn't really know him. But with nothing else to do while driving, we talked about everything. We had so much more in common than I had previously realized. Over the course of the next couple of weeks, we became friends. The specific memory during the guided meditation was of the 2 of us sitting in a diner. We sat across from each other in a booth. I can perfectly remember how the sunlight reflected off his hair, and in that moment, I was in love with being alive. But here's the thing, that never happened. None of it. I didn't go on a road trip. I never became friends with this person. When the video told me to remember my favorite memory, the diner scene popped into my head and I somehow knew the backstory. It was one of the strangest things I've ever experienced. I know it sounds like I just made up an imaginary story, but it didn't feel like a made-up story. It was a memory. I wasn't daydreaming. I was remembering. Case file number 1721, written by Rudest Boy, The Homespun Goblin Run. Growing up, me and my brother were latchkey kids. I was in 7th grade, and my brother was like 2nd or 3rd grade, early 2000s. We would be home alone from the time we got home from school until our mom got home around 6 p.m. One day we were watching TV, and there was a loud thud. like something fell in one of the bedrooms at the end of the hall. Then the pitter-patter of feet running. I turned to look down the hall, and then running towards us was, I guess, like a goblin gnome Rumpelstiltskin thing. It honestly looked like a small 2 to 3 foot tall medieval peasant. I couldn't believe what I saw. It ran down the hall past us and then out of our back door. I watched it the entire time. It's not like I saw it out of the corner of my eye. I remember looking over at my brother and he said, "Did you see the little man?" And I immediately started crying, grabbed him, then our cordless house phone, and sat on the front porch to call our mom and told her to come home. I've never had any paranormal experiences before or after that. We don't come from a religious family, or one that believes in that sort of stuff. We weren't watching anything scary. I really don't know. Me and my brother are both grown now. We still tell that story sometimes camping, at parties, and I can tell most people don't believe us, but it's true. I've read of group and shared hallucinations, but really don't know what else it could be. Case file number 1722, written by On and On Anon. A day turned tragic, but resolved with magic. I learned how to crochet about 15 years ago. One day when I was first learning, I was sitting at my desk with a project because I needed to follow the pattern on my computer. I drew out my crochet hook. It was a bright blue, almost aqua color. I bent down to look for it and it wasn't there. My carpet was a very light carpet, and there was nothing on the floor. It wasn't hiding under papers, for example. Nothing was on the floor. I looked around thinking maybe it had rolled somewhere. Nothing. I was confused and also annoyed because I needed that hook. Each size was a different color and I needed that size. And since I had just recently learned, I only had one hook in that size. Later I ran to Walmart and picked up another one. So now I have two. The new one and the missing one. A few days later I was crocheting again. My husband came out of our bedroom with the hook that was missing. He happened to see it in the basket where I kept my crochet stuff. I know that it was missing in our office area, not my bedroom. I thought that maybe one of the kids found it and put it back. Weird and unlikely, but explainable. Cool, now I have two hooks in that size. Another few days passed and I didn't really think about it anymore. I was at my desk again, not crocheting. Something caught my eye and I looked down and the hook was there, exactly where it would have been when I dropped it originally. It had not been there when I sat down. So I picked it up and thought that it was definitely weird and went to put it in the basket in my room. And when I did, there were already two hooks in that size in my basket. Now I know for 100% sure that I started with just one hook. Because this was a new hobby for me, and I had just a few hooks and no duplicates. If this happened now, I'd have no idea how many I have in each size, but at that time, I definitely only had one. Then I bought one to replace it, which makes two. So how in the world did a third one show up? Right where the original one disappeared about a week earlier. Case file number 1723, written by Han Shot First, 5445. A stranger's smile from mile to mile. I want to start by saying I consider myself a very observant person. I am horrible with names, but I will remember a face. This is what makes me confident enough to share this story. My wife and I went to Louisiana for her best friend's wedding. It was a long trip from where we lived in the upper Midwest, but it was worth it. Her friend's family made us feel so welcomed, like we were honestly a part of their family. We did the normal wedding stuff, rehearsals and other things, but we also just hung out in general. After the rehearsals, the wedding party, both the bride and groom's families went out to eat at this Mexican restaurant. This was a massive party though, so my social battery was dying really quickly. I told my wife I needed to go to the bathroom, which I genuinely did, but it was also an excuse to get a quick recharge. Now this is where it gets unsettling. I did my business and started washing my hands. That's when this man walked in. I'll never forget how he looked. He was a heavy-set Caucasian dude. He had a closed-cropped beard and wore an extremely loud and almost ridiculous cowboy outfit. He came in smiling at me and washing his hands. We exchanged greetings like usual, and then he complimented my shirt. It was a Spider-Man No Way Home shirt. I thanked him, and then he said he loves superheroes, and that he had the full collection of Christopher Reeve's Superman films at his house. I thought it was a normal thing to boast of, but then it hit me that out of all the superhero movies he could choose, he picked my favorite, Superman. I brushed it off as coincidence and said goodbye. We both walked out, him behind me. As I was walking back to my seat, I suddenly heard the same dude, clear as day, say my name out loud. I spun around since he was right behind me, and he was gone. I looked around and he was nowhere to be seen. It genuinely freaked me out because I never even mentioned my name to him. It was almost impossible for him to leave the restaurant that quickly. I told my wife and she chalked it up to coincidence. The rest of the wedding planning went well, but then the reception came around. I was having an absolute blast. Not drinking a thing, mind you. I was underage at the time. When I spotted this dude, bald everywhere, besides his eyebrows, staring at me. I stared at him back, and considering my last experience, I started making my way towards him. I made it to where he was, and he was gone. I looked everywhere, around the party, accounted for every face, and nobody matched. I had chills for a while before trying to shake it off and enjoy the party. Fast forward 3 months later, and my wife and I moved down south to the Carolinas. We were looking for a place since we were staying with my parents, so we checked out a town that some friends were living in. This town is about 3 hours from my parents. While out to eat with them, I went to the bathroom again. As soon as I was done in the stall, I turned the corner of the stall to the sink and almost ran into someone. I looked up, and it was the same man from Louisiana. He wasn't wearing a cowboy outfit, nor did he speak. He just smiled at me, and it wasn't a genuine smile. He smiled only in his mouth. The rest of his face wasn't smiling. I stood shocked and looked at this other dude in there. That's when I realized the other stall was open. He didn't need to wait for my stall. The guy just walked into the stall, still smiling at me. I went back to my seat and told my wife, in which she got chills. Our seat was in front of the bathroom, so I watched intently to see if he would come out so I could show her. He never did. I rushed back into the bathroom to see if he was still in there, and the stall was empty. I'm still freaked out by this. It seems almost impossible for someone to follow us that much, literally across states. I don't know who is following me, or if they have good intentions or not. Case file number 1724, written by 5X Champ. Where did my keys go? Merely gone with the flow? The morning my car keys vanished into thin, cold air in January 2021. During COVID, I drove my car by myself to a big medical center complex with a huge parking lot on a very cold morning. Pull into a parking space, shut off the ignition, reach for a mask which I thought was on the car seat. Not there, so I got one out of my backpack. Get out of my car, close the door, reach up to my left hip to get my key remote to lock the doors. My keys are not on my belt. Search all my coat, vest, and jeans pockets. No keys. Okay, they are maybe still in the ignition. No. Look in the console. Look down each side of the seats. Look under both seats. Inside the seats. Glove compartment. Get out of the car. Think maybe they slide off my coat. Look under my car, under the car parked next to me, and around my car. No keys. By now, I am late for my appointment. Pulled spare ignition key out of my backpack to lock the car. Go inside for a doctor's appointment. Come back out after the doctor's appointment. No cars parked around me. Nothing. Look at a couple of nearby light poles, thinking maybe somebody saw them. Place them in an obvious place. Nope. Went back in to ask the guard at the front desk, but no guard on duty at the moment. Drive home using a spare ignition key, figuring I can search better in a warm car in my driveway, because the keys have to be in there somewhere, right? Nope. Going back to the medical center the next day, this time guard is at the front desk. No Honda keys have been turned in. I have had the car detailed several times in the last 3 years. Looked repeatedly here, there, and everywhere, but the keys have never turned up. One of the greatest mysteries of my life, because I had to have had the keys to drive to the medical center to begin with. Case file number 1725, written by Grumbles to Internet. The night Kilroy came. A tale of fear and fame. I was about 9. I was camping in a camper with my elder cousin, 12, and younger cousin, 6, and my grandparents. We were in a very isolated camping spot in Appalachia. It was off an old logging trail, literally in the middle of nowhere. This would have been around 1990. It had just gotten dark. We kids were huddled up on a little pull-out bed, watching a movie on a portable little TV hooked to a VCR. I'll never forget it. We were watching The Goonies. My grandpa had just gone to bed in the back of the camper, and my grandma was just waiting for the movie, which was almost over, to go to bed. All of a sudden, the power went out. I'm not sure why, but my grandma didn't seem worried. We had lanterns lit anyway, but no more movies, and we were bummed. Then all of the sounds of nature stopped. No crickets. We went from complaining about the movie to being scared silent. My grandma came to our pull-out bed and hugged us. That's when the squeaky camper door flew open and slapped the outside of the camper. In walked a dirty, smelly man. He was crazy looking. Wild eyes, scraggly beard, ruined clothes all torn and filthy. He smelled like a wild animal and cigarettes. He looked impossibly old, thin as a scarecrow, almost literally, like impossibly thin. He must have been almost just a skeleton under all the layers of soiled clothes. He stared right at my grandma for a few minutes, totally silently, and she hugged us tighter. I kept praying my grandpa would awake behind him with a shotgun and save us. But he somehow just kept sleeping. All you could hear was a snore. The man said, "I made a wrong turn at Albuquerque. Tell Tommy Kilroy was here," and then kept staring at us. I literally peed myself right there and then, and I wasn't the only one. All of us kids did. My grandma said, "I promise I will." He kept staring at us, and I was sure we were going to die. He reached up and pushed his right eyeball into his head. It kinda squished around his finger and fluid came out. "I'm keeping an eye on you, Agnes." My grandma's named Agnes. He then walked out and the door squealed back closed. We were shivering and wet and starting to cry together when the movie came back on. Seemingly incredibly loud after the silence, and we all screamed until my grandpa woke up. I remember my grandma telling him Kilroy was here, and him getting so white and pale, asking if all the kids were still here, which caused my grandma to frantically come back to us and hug it all over again. I don't remember anything else until morning. I thought it was a dream, but I had different underwear on, and the bed had new sheets and blankets. Our peed-on stuff was all in a hamper, and I was so scared all over. I asked about the night, and nobody remembered, except my youngest cousin, who asked if we really peed the bed together. She thought it was hilarious. My grandparents would hush us up angrily or hurriedly if we brought it up. When my little cousin asked who Kilroy was, my grandfather looked scared, making us promise not to say that until we were home, but we never talked about it again. I strangely forgot all about it for years until one day, I was looking through a book at the library and saw a picture in it of World War II graffiti saying, "Kilroy was here." And it appeared again in my mind all at once. I have no idea what happened or why, and my grandparents are long gone. He knew my grandparents' names, whatever he was. Case file number 1726, written by Character 2 7232, The Wandering Bit, a tale of the little folks' wit. A couple years ago, I was trying to install some floating shelves in my living room. The wall is hollow and needs anchors. I was using a handheld screwdriver with a detachable magnetic flathead bit to try and gently work the anchor into the wall. The screwdriver was from one of those little simple IKEA toolkits that comes with a hammer, pliers, a bare screwdriver with a bunch of detachable magnetic screwdriver heads that sit in a row for storage. Well, the hole opened up more than I anticipated. The flathead bit got stuck in the anchor and both fell into the wall. This was very clear as I pulled back the screwdriver and found it with no head. I remember cussing about it and grabbing a flashlight to see if I could fish them out, but alas, they were gone. I also very clearly saw the row of screwdriver bits with one flathead missing. It made my OCD flare. I even remember wondering if or where I could buy a single replacement. The toolkit is like $10, so really not a huge loss, but annoyingly hard to replace single bits as a result. Fast forward 2 or 3 weeks. My friend is over helping with a project in the garage. We were installing hooks and shelves on the walls for tools. I was assessing before starting. I had the power drill, but also wanted to grab the toolkit from inside just to have extra stuff on hand. I haven't touched it since the floating wall installation, I pulled the IKEA toolkit from the drawer it lives in and popped it open, since I wanted to check out which bits I might need. Everything was in place. I looked at the row of screwdriver bits, and the freaking flathead bit is there. Like nothing had ever happened. I'm just slack-jawed. My friend who was helping me that day is Ojibwe, and told me it's the little people. Ojibwe culture recognizes little people, who are very similar to the ones from Irish and Scandinavian lore. He suggested I start leaving them gifts like hard candies, tiny shiny objects as a thank you, which I actually did. For me, it definitely felt very glitch in the Matrix. To this day, it blows my mind. What do you all think? Case file number 1727, written by General Chicken 99. Blink and she's there. Megan's supernatural flair. I got a story for you. Both my friends and I, let's call her Megan, were fully aware of these instances and both completely shocked when they occurred. We still talk about them to this day. In high school, during a pep rally, I don't know if y'all did those, but it was like a day where the grades battled it out for fun in the gym. Everyone's energy is high. Maybe energetically, this caused the phenomenon. Anyway, all of the students were going crazy, and the stairs and hallways and a lunch table area were packed. I was squished between kids downstairs, and I could see my friend Megan squished between kids upstairs. It was loud, so I motioned for her to make it down to me. Just then, a giant loogie comes hurtling towards me and hits me on the shoulder. In an impossible instant, no exaggeration, Megan was by my side. She was pissed. She saw who did it and came down to help me. But when we were together, we both had the realization of, holy crap, how did you get down here so fast? It would have been impossible to make it down here, even if the stairs and halls were empty and weren't packed with kids. We were freaked out. Second time this happened with the same girl, Megan. I was in the bathroom crying. Something bad had just happened to me. I texted her to come. She was far on the other side of the campus. Just then I hear footsteps very near down the hall, jogging towards the bathroom. It's her. Again, we were both freaking out and realizing how fast she came to me. It wasn't just exceptionally fast for a human, it was humanly impossibly fast, and to this day we refer to these instances as teleporting. Don't know if that's a correct term, but we were also in high school. About 13 years ago, before I knew all about glitches. I still wonder about those instances, what really happened. She was a very special girl. I wouldn't doubt for a second she has powers of some sort. We lost contact, but here and there, when I see her seldom post on social media, she's in another remote country, making me wonder yet again, how the hell did she get all the way over there? We talked about it many times in the past. She had nothing to report other than she literally just was standing there 1 minute and then she was here. It was instantaneous for her. We noticed at both instances, or when she was in an emotionally charged state of mind. She experienced a lot of physical abuse as a child. I wonder if she learned at a young age to travel away from her body. She was super smart, like she was an AP kid, super into physics and chemistry. Case file number 1728, written by Shuzi 987. Twice the pain, a sorrowful refrain. 7 years ago, while visiting my grandparents, they told me their next-door neighbor's son committed an ending in their house a few days prior. He was about 30 and had some tough mental health struggles. It was fairly traumatic as he had children in the house who witnessed the event. The children were sent to my grandparents' house for a few hours, while ambulances were called and the scene was cleared up. It was clearly horrendous for all involved. The somber conversation took up most of the afternoon, with my grandmother breaking down in tears. My grandmother sadly passed between then and now, and my grandfather is also getting on in life. My mother called me a few weeks ago to tell me my grandparents' neighbor's son had committed an ending the day before, and essentially retold me the entire story, down to the children going to my granddad's house while their home is cleared up. I told her I knew, and it happened years ago. She told me it was just yesterday. Both utterly confused, I ended the call and was genuinely worried about my mother. She's late 50s now, retelling me old stories. So I called my very elderly granddad, who broke down on the phone and was utterly shell-shocked, telling me he had to look after the poor kids. So I'm thinking maybe my granddad is having issues with his memory and has retold to my mother, and somehow she didn't remember it happening years ago? Wanting to check my own sanity at this point, I called my daughter and she confirmed with me that I had told her the guy had passed away years ago. It was common knowledge, and I'm sure we had discussed it many times. We came to the conclusion my grandfather was accidentally gaslighting my mom. Only he wasn't. The funeral was the following week. They both attended, and the death was in the local newspaper. My granddad has zero recollection of telling me with my grandma years ago. Case file number 1729, written by Kenna Kuhi. Anger's Echo, the Spirit's Shadow. It follows. That's how I call this experience. When I was 20, I visited someone's apartment and had the strangest urge to spurt out. There's an older man here, and he's very angry at you for something. He became very upset and started demanding, "Why are you saying that? How could you know that?" Honestly, he was becoming a bit scared. He was so upset. I apologized, as I had no idea why I would even say something so strange out of nowhere. I explained I got this weird urge and feeling when I looked in a specific corner of the room. When he calmed down, he explained that years ago, he was married and his dying father-in-law told him, "If you ever hurt my daughter, I will haunt you forever." He did end up hurting the daughter and a bad divorce ensued. Apparently ever since that, he has had this feeling of being followed. He actually even moved countries and still didn't feel safe. And I believe he said he feels especially uneasy about that specific corner. 100% he never told me any of this, not even a hint. I didn't know he used to be married, didn't know anything about his religion or spirituality, etc. His friends never mentioned any of this. So what came over me, I have no idea. But there was an older man, and he was angry. Case file number 1730, written by Flypaper for Freaks. Cemetery Tune, A Mystery by Moon. 20-something years ago, when I was at university with my boyfriend at the time, I was on our way home from the movies, not quite ready to call it a night. He'd spill a drink on his shirt and didn't want to go out anywhere public, so our options were pretty limited. It's important to note that we were driving in his car, which was a beat-up old thing from circa 1980. Its audio system didn't work, so he had a tape deck sitting in the back seat that he played his music through. The tape deck seemed about as old as the car. You had to really push down the buttons hard to play, rewind, fast forward the music. We were listening to Live Secret, Samadhi, and just letting the tape play through. As we drove along, we got the idea that it might be fun to check out a cemetery we had just passed. We were that bored, okay? We stopped the car, reached into the back seat, and pushed stop on the tape deck, mid-song, which happened to be the 8th track, Turn My Head. I remembered this clearly because I don't particularly like that song. I was glad we didn't have to hear the whole thing. We locked the car and went into the cemetery. After exploring for about 10 minutes, we headed back to the car, mainly because security had spotted us. We unlocked it, got in, reached into the back, pushed on the play button, and began to drive off. The song, Ghost, started up from the beginning of the track, and we remarked on how it was kind of appropriate given where we had just been. The next track played, and the next, and then Turn My Head started playing. It took me a minute before I realized, wasn't that the song we had been in the middle of listening to when we stopped the tape? Ghost is the 5th song. If we had accidentally bumped the rewind button when we stopped the tape, wouldn't it have rewound all the way through to the start of the tape? Why would it just stop at the start of the 5th song, which happened to be called Ghost? The car was still locked, and we hadn't been gone long. Who could have gotten into the car to mess with it, and why? Now, I'm not suggesting it was anything supernatural, but to this day, he and I have not been able to work out how this could have happened. Any ideas, seriously? Case file number 1731, written by String of Maid, the cat I adore who glitched through the door. I have to feed the old man cat behind a closed door to keep the young fat cats from stealing his food. This morning I do admit the door wasn't fully closed, but that's not a problem because the fats have learned not to push through, because they're not getting any, and the old man is no longer lucid, strong, or agile enough to open the door even when cracked. So the door was about 2 fingers open when he was done eating. Because he's been eating the box, as soon as he's done eating, I did not hesitate to follow him to the door. My eyes did leave him, but not the door, since that was my destination. But he wasn't at the door when I got there. I looked around the room for him, confused, then figured he just took a sharp right into a hidey hole. I opened the door, which was still just 2 fingers open. Door swings in. and there he was on the other side, acting like he was confused, getting ready to make his feeble attempts to squeeze in. It's worth noting that the door does have a hitch that makes it loud and a little more difficult to swing open. So unless he's narrow enough and had a moment of lucidity, great enough to escape, I would have seen and heard the door swing. Or I fed a ghost cat, or my cat just glitched through the door. Case file number 1732, written by Cybergirl JPEG. Antique Maze and My Phone's Lost Days. A year or so ago, I visited an antique store in my neighborhood that I frequented relatively often. I use the word antique loosely, as this particular store was run by a family that owned the building they were in and had a habit of purchasing people's estates sight unseen, so you can imagine how packed this place is. The store is near impossible to navigate, as they have piles and piles of disorganized merchandise that is similarly set to the antique shop episode of Nathan For You. This store was also known to service a large portion of my city's local theaters for things like costumes and props. I can't stress enough that this place was filled to the brim with products that have been sitting for well over 20 years. I am with my husband looking through a bin of old maps on one side of their basement. I do a quick look around the general area I'm standing near, as this basement has incredibly low ceilings that my husband is too tall to maneuver comfortably, and a maze of shelves of miscellaneous metalware, accented by a back wall lined with Easter bunny costumes that were truly terrifying to me, ultimately discouraging me from looking any further into this basement. We leave the basement and I'm looking around at random things on the upper level. I go to pull my phone out to take a picture of something, but my phone isn't in my pocket. I begin to retrace my steps as I realize this is probably the worst place to lose my phone. I return to the basement with the creepy costumes and retrace my steps there. The area I was in was maybe 20 square feet, but this basement expands throughout what is essentially a quarter of a city block under this building. I ask my husband to call me, but my phone is on vibrate. Whatever little sound is being silenced by the insane amount of costumes and fabric down here. I expanded my search in the basement with my husband continuing to call me, stepping over old milk jugs, rotary telephones, thinking of any obsolete technology, and it was in this basement, and I was stepping over it. I eventually found my phone sitting on a high shelf towards the back of the room, an area I had initially visited and was difficult to get to on a shelf, where the items on top weren't exactly visible to me. I don't know how it got there, but it certainly wasn't myself or my husband that put it there, as we were together the entire time. I left with the willies and haven't been back there since. Case file number 1733, written by North Star 0566, 3 a.m. Shout, the mystery voice that went all out. Was asleep with my girlfriend in our bed one night. This was roughly around 3 a.m. from what I recall. Our bedroom door was wide open as normal, facing our living room and kitchen. We were both awkward at the same moment as a voice called out, good. It was a voice that sort of crackled as the words came out. And what sticks out to me the most is that I could feel the sound vibration hit the bed as it happened. Not like a massive vibration or anything, just imagine someone yelling at you from 5 feet away, you feel it. It immediately awoke both of us, and my girlfriend grabbed me asking if I heard that. I sure as hell did. For some reason I got up and ran to investigate. Turned all the lights on in the house. Investigated the area down the hallway. Nothing was there. To this day we still talk about it, and it brings goosebumps to my arms. We slept the rest of that night with all the lights on. Just one of those things, I don't fixate on it. I don't have an explanation for what happened, but it definitely happened and both of us were there to experience it. I guess in the moment I thought it was cool. Something unexplained happened to me despite it being a rather scary moment. Case file number 1734, written by Call Andy, 90. Midnight Maid, a Family Wade. When I was a kid, about 4 or 5, I would sometimes go downstairs for a while and then come back up to my room during the night. My parents noticed this, but weren't too worried, as they assumed I was just using the bathroom or getting a snack or something. One day I came back upstairs in floods of tears saying that, "The lady is gone, she said we can't talk anymore." Obviously my parents found this very odd, asked me about the lady, and I explained that I would go to talk to a lady that cleans the kitchen. My parents just assumed I'd been sleepwalking or something. Fast forward about 7 years to when my younger brother is about the same age. We're all in the car and my brother says he's been having some really strange dreams. Mom asks him what they're about, and he says that there's a lady that cleans the house at night. But she's really friendly, and the dreams feel really real. Everyone in the car just goes silent. No one says anything for a few seconds. But you could feel the, "What the flying hell?" vibe in the car. No one had ever told my brother about this. Ever since, I'd always felt very, very weird when going downstairs during the night. I really wish me or my brother could remember the mystery woman at all, but neither of us have any memory of it. Case file number 1735, written by Potato Threes. Popsicle Puzzle, Flavors in Trouble. A couple years ago, I had my tonsils removed. In preparation of the procedure, I had gone out and bought a bunch of easy-to-eat foods, including a variety pack of popsicles. The flavors advertised on the box were strawberry, pineapple, grape, and tangerine. Upon opening the pack prior to my surgery, I found the variety pack was actually just a large box containing 4 smaller boxes of different flavors. I noticed at that time that there was no grape box, but 2 tangerine boxes instead. I made a remark to my spouse that there was no grape, but that's okay because it's my least favorite flavor, and they gave me double my favorite flavor. Yay! Fast forward a couple days, and I've had the procedure. I go to eat a popsicle, and all of a sudden, there's a box of grapes and only 1 box of tangerine. I hold up the pack of grape popsicles to my spouse, and I'm like, what the heck? They were just as confused as I was. I have no idea what happened there. I even confirmed with my spouse that I had in fact mentioned a couple days ago there were 2 boxes of tangerine and no grape, so there's no way I dreamt or imagined it. Case file number 1736, written by C Implement 23. Feline Mirage, my cat's Matrix Barrage. Basically just like the Matrix movie. This was 10 years ago in a tiny house my husband and I were renting. We had a tiny hallway with 2 doors facing each other. The left doorway led to our bedroom, and to the right was our kitchen entrance, and directly ahead in the middle was the bathroom. By hallway, I mean a 5-foot by 4-foot floor space area that connected into the living room. I remember laying on the carpet in the living room, looking into the hallway to make sure we put the baby gate up between the living room and hallway so our toddler wouldn't crawl into the kitchen. I watched as our one and only cat walked from our bedroom into the kitchen. I kept lying there because I was yell talking, not angrily, through the door at my husband, who was in the bathroom directly in front of me. About 5 seconds later, our cat walked, again, from our bedroom to our kitchen, directly across my path, which would have been physically impossible because our cat should still have been in the kitchen. There was no other way out. It was a super old house and windows didn't open, so theoretically, if we left a bedroom window open and the kitchen window open, she could have run a giant fast circuit outside of the house back into our bedroom window. But all the windows except for one were painted shut. Never experienced anything like that again, so who knows? Maybe cats are just like that. They are. Case file number 1737, written by Metal Ornery 8970. Dimensional Drift, The Newtown Twist. I recently decided to make a new start, changed profession and became a teacher. Moved out to a small town to pay less rent and eat organic food. I'm in my mid-30s and realize that living in a capital is financial madness. Been here for about a month and a half. My wife and I were in our parents' house until we moved to a small 1-bedroom apartment at the back of a garage. It's pretty sweet. I know that the walk to the school I work at is about 15 minutes tops. But 2 days ago, I went to walk to work and it was my first time from this apartment. Given that I am now new in town, I took out my Google Maps and went for it. I had 30 minutes to get there, and as I walked towards it, I saw a route that would be 5 minutes faster. Once I took it, 15 minutes jumped to 20. Then, as I walked towards the school, the time increased to 27 minutes. I stopped and called an Uber. I was a 15 minutes drive from work. Fair enough, seems like I just got lost, right? Then, talking to the admin lady that follows our system for attendance, she told me that she once took a wrong turn here and it took her 3 hours to find her way back. Not only that, she described the same house as I did, and how none of us at the school knew what neighborhood that was. In a town that has 3 supermarkets and mostly hardware stores, 2 drives through is a bizarre experience. All the houses were white, with nice hedges. It's odd since it's a rural area with houses that look nothing like that. Now, the thing that got me weird about it makes no sense how in a 15-minute walk, I ended up 45 minutes from my house in the next town, more than 30 minutes from work. I walked for 17 minutes? That's the first part of the story, which happened several years ago. Some people suggested I go back and try to find the town, so here's an update on my search. I went looking for that place. I've walked all over that area of town and nothing. I couldn't even find a place like that ever existed. I asked local gardeners about this place and walked around for hours. Ask local shop workers? No one has ever come across a place like the one I was at. Since the town in question is my wife's hometown and not mine, I just thought, okay, got lost, was weird, but I went on living. But it's been in the back of my mind that something is off. I came back to right here because I noticed weird little things and also larger things. I started to suspect that I shifted dimensions and never got back to my original dimension. Majority of things I noticed are dismissible because either I forgot or loads of glitches happened. As the saying goes, the devil is in the details. My timeline is completely off. I came back to London after being away for 5 years. My family says I have been away for 4 years. My original post was 3 years ago, and it said 1 year ago, which is also not possible because I worked at least a year at the next school I was at when I first wrote the post. My wife is certain we lived in our hometown for 2 years. I remember 3 years ago. I didn't really give it too much thought. Maybe I'm one of those guys that messes up dates? I mean, makes sense. I remember the year above, but when I got back to London, where I grew up, is when I noticed something was really different. I went out to do errands, walked up towards the main high road, and noticed new shops. Fair enough, new shops, it happens when you have been away, but it wasn't that. It was looking at the little different things. I started to look for some shops and couldn't find them in my head. I thought I was going to have to learn my local area again. I know it's been some time and places open and close, fair enough, but I can't find the actual location of key places like post offices. Like there are 2 missing post offices, like the building. The building I looked for wasn't ever there. I went to Google to look up the history and asked local people if there ever was a post office there. What rattled me most, the most unsettling part, was having the security guard at the library tell me that there was one, but 10 years ago. Other things I noticed was that the metal band I was in doesn't have an album anymore. The guys I spoke with from the band also have a different timeline to mine. Some of my stuff is different, like certain brand designs don't exist. For example, there was a pair of Van shoes that I used to own 3 pairs of, but I couldn't find them. In fact, I looked online to buy them. It's like they never ever existed. I talk about it and people don't even remember that I own them. I searched all over my family storage for them. They aren't anywhere. Oddly enough, I found my mom's clothes were where these shoes were supposed to be. I go to the family home to set up my bed and looked at the sofa with some confusion and asked if there was upholstery redone on the sofa bed. My mom just laughed like I was pulling her leg. But I know they had pineapples on that sofa. No pineapples now. This is a sofa my family's had since I was 15. When I asked about them, my mom looked at me like I was pulling her leg because the sofa is white now. What's more unsettling is that it's always been white. The local Greasy Spoon cafe that I ate at apparently not remembered, as if it never existed, and has been a Thai restaurant for ages. Odd one was that the pub that's actually, I remember getting drunk there, is like a nursery school, and has been there for years according to a lady at the corner shop. Later I went to play guitar, and I noticed that one of my broken guitars I had fixed, over the neck, and had a line over from the glue. Well, there is no sign of it ever being broken. One of my pedals, I had a tube screamer, is green and not orange. That was so weird. My old room at my parents' house is bigger. When I got here, it messed with my head a bit, so I measured it, because I thought I was going crazy. Extra 1 meter in size. All this until now sounds like I have been away, maybe not really remembering stuff properly or whatever. Frankly, I'm even considering that I am a little confused about stuff, or maybe just never paid that much attention. But I was walking back to my parents' house, and the lines next to the road that should be the same, well, they should be orange and not yellow, and red and yellow zigzag, not double red. There's other stuff I noticed, like certain foods tasting different, and gates in different places. Either way, I know people are going to be skeptical, and I'm really just writing because it's weird for me. Case file number 1738, written by Luneko. The Color Switch, a room's curious glitch. My boyfriend's family have this house in the countryside where me and my boyfriend like to go spend the weekends like once every 2 or 3 months. Ever since the first time I went to this house, my boyfriend's room had its walls painted light green. Although the shades of green is pretty light, it's dark enough so you can distinguish it from other colors, especially white. Last month, I went to this house again, and the walls on this room were now fully white. I instantly realized it was looking different, and said to my boyfriend that the room looked way better that way, with white walls. My boyfriend looked at me like I was crazy and said, "What are you talking about? They've always been this color." I'm already used to him not paying attention to anything. He has severe ADHD, so it's not weird that he never noticed before. So I said that his room was green before. He denied again. And then I showed him on my phone a picture of him inside the room with green walls. We laughed about his lack of attention to the world around him, and that was it. We spent the whole weekend there, and during that time we slept in his room, now with white walls. Now last weekend, his parents held an event there, and I got there earlier to help with the preparations. As soon as I entered his room, the walls were painted light green again. I asked him if his father asked someone to paint the walls again, and one more time, he said his walls have always been that color. I said that the last time I was there the walls were painted white, but maybe his dad painted them white and painted them green again. He assured me that those walls were not painted again in a long time, because you could still see stains that have always been there. It's true, I could see the old stains and marks too. I then mentioned that we already had this exact same conversation last time I was there, but with the white walls, and he remembered it right away. I said that maybe his dad changed the light bulbs, but he was 100% sure that no one did such a thing. Although my boyfriend's memory is not that reliable, I do believe no one painted the walls again or changed the light bulbs. Even if someone did, last month I could still see the room white, with only the sunlight that came from the window, and there were indeed very old stains in the walls. Things like marks where the beds used to touch the walls, and little dots from killed insects. My boyfriend didn't care that much about this occurrence. He said it was weird and moved on. I've read many stories here about objects going missing, but never came across something like this. Has anyone here ever experienced a similar event? Case file number 1739, written by Ambidextra. Bolt from the Blue, a workshop tale told true. I had taken apart an old piece of furniture that I was salvaging, and it was put together with old screws and bolts. After I cleaned it all up, I reassembled it and had the last bolt in my hand. It was a little rusty, so I decided to grab some WD-40 to clean it up. I walked to my kitchen, put the bolt down on the counter, and went to grab the WD-40. Turned back around, and the bolt was gone. This was a long lag bolt. Had it rolled off the counter, it would have made noise. I spent the next 5 minutes looking everywhere, including under furniture, places it wouldn't be, etc. I was flummoxed. I finally decided to head down to the basement, which is where my workshop is, and see if I had a similar bolt to use. Right as I reached the back door in the kitchen to head outside, the access door is outside, I heard a weird metallic ping and turned to see the bolt falling from ceiling height, hitting the counter and rolling to a stop. I was the only one home. It was like it went to another dimension, where I did. Case file number 1740, written by Pikachu Pal 24. Invisible thirst from a Gatorade burst. This has been bothering me since it happened last week, and I can't come up with an explanation for it. The night before this happened, I had noticed that I didn't have anything to drink. I asked my husband if he would get me a Gatorade in the morning, because he usually goes to the store before he leaves for work. When I woke up the next day, he had already left. I went to go look, but figured he had forgotten, since it was pretty late when I told him, and he forgets things a lot. I looked through the whole fridge, including the drawers. Sure enough, I couldn't find any new drinks in there. I poured myself a bit of leftover Sprite, because it was the only thing in there. But I really don't like drinking soda much, especially in the morning. I came back and got something else out of the fridge about an hour later as well, and there were still no drinks in there. At this point, I assumed I was going to have to walk to the store to get a drink. He had our only vehicle, but figured I would ask him just in case he did get some and just forgot to put them in the fridge. He told me he got 2 Gatorades and that they were both in the fridge. I went to look yet another time, and there they were, front and center. In fact, they were right next to the bottle of Sprite. I don't know how I could have possibly missed them while grabbing the bottle right next to them. Even if I was half asleep, and that unaware of what I was looking at. I had come back to the fridge a second time already, and was definitely awake at that point. It's like the drinks didn't exist until he mentioned them, and suddenly, there they were. Case file number 1741, written by Hamel Trash 1232, Legends of the Hilltop Hotel, Where Shadows Dwell. Okay, so I used to live in a very small town called Lucerne, in Lake County, California. Usually, nobody's heard of it unless they live nearby in Napa or the surrounding areas. Anyway, on the 13th street of this town, there stands a large hotel. It's been abandoned now, and it was built decades ago. Back in the 20s, I think. So anyway, this hotel is at the top of a very large hill that overlooks the town. Well, one day, when I'm walking home from school with a friend, we see a figure standing at the top of the hill. Now, before I describe the rest of this, I should mention that this was not the Hat Man. He didn't have the hat, and also he didn't have red eyes. But it was so bizarre. It was like we were being pulled to him, but at the same time, we were terrified. He was completely absent of any light reflection, no facial features, and no movement. Me and my friend ran to my house, and he didn't leave until he saw the shadow was gone. About 3 months later, at 3 in the morning, we hear the alarms of the hotel go off. You could only hear it on our street, but our street was mostly vacant. Me and my grandmother went outside, and we saw a woman in white standing on a balcony, gazing down at us. Case file number 1742, written by Mrs. McScruggs, Ball to Bag, The Glitchy Snag. Sure, I've had odd things happen from time to time over the years, but this is a whole new level for me. This time, I was playing with my dog, bouncing and tossing a ball in my kitchen for him to catch and chase. I was near the dining room table. I bounced the ball. My dog missed it, and it bounced off his nose and rolled under the table. I know it went towards the table, as my dog followed it too, and was bending down looking under the table as well. It was not there. I thought perhaps it bounced again and landed on one of the table chairs. Nope. I could not find it anywhere. Gone. I was confused. The dog was confused. My husband even looked around thinking it might have rolled further under a cabinet or something. I know it went in the direction of under the dining table as the dog was looking too. I never found it. 2 days later, I was at a doctor's appointment, fishing in my bag for some paperwork, and lo and behold, there was my dog's ball. My bag was hanging in a different room at the time the ball disappeared, on a coat rack hook, nowhere near the table or even in the possible direction of a wayward bounce. Like, what the heck? I'm seeing more and more glitch videos. I'm not seeking them out. And seeing more and more glitch-type stories. I think perhaps we do live in a simulation. The computer program is getting more and more buggy. Maybe it's reached its computational lifespan? Or has some malware the programmers are unaware of? Perhaps with the advent of the internet, where more information can be shared further and wider, we are learning more about glitches due to shared information. And glitches have always been with us. Us old folk didn't see it before because information was rather limitedly shared. However, we've widely been using the internet for 25 to 30 years, and I started hearing on the regular about glitches just a few years ago. But why would this just start happening in my life now? Whereas up until now, nothing this strange has ever happened to me. Maybe my sim is due for reprogramming or extinction. Thoughts I ponder. Case file number 1743. Written by Wrenchity Wrench, Restroom Riddle, The Neatly Folded Middle. This is about as random as it gets, and I apologize for the TMI level, but I'll keep it polite. I was about to take a shower and decided to pee while waiting for the water to get warm. Sat down, did so, collected my toilet paper in a good old-fashioned roll and scrunch technique, cleared the field, so to speak, and then stood up to toss the toilet paper in the toilet, and as I turned around, I see a very neatly folded section of toilet paper just sitting on the left side of the toilet seat, towards the middle where I still would have been touching it if I sat back down. And it definitely would have stuck to me when I stood up. It looked to be 4 or 5 squares, neatly folded and flat, just sitting there, clean and undisturbed. I was stunned. And This is actually the third or fourth time that this has ever happened to me in my life, but the first time I couldn't write it off. The other times didn't make sense either, but I had clothes on at the time and was like, maybe I had toilet paper stuck to me for some reason. Or maybe it was just on the underside of the lid of the toilet and it fell off and I just didn't notice it. Nothing really seemed plausible at the time, but I couldn't just count those things out and it freaked me out. So I just made myself shrug it off, though I was a bit paranoid about things sticking to my clothing unbeknownst to me for a bit. But in this recent scenario, I was in my birthday suit, so there was nothing to cling to or get stuck on, and I was about to hop in the shower, and the lid was up before I sat down. And I even taken a peek to see how clean everything was, because I was making a mental chore list for the day. Not the sexiest glitch, but it's still very much a what the hell moment for me. Anyone else ever experienced this? I have zero clue what or why or how. Just to include that all my carbon monoxide detectors are functioning normally. Case file number 1744. Written by Ellie Loves. Vanished in a restaurant as fast as my croissant. You know, that's supposed to be rhyming, but I can't say it not French. I bumped into an older man, maybe 50s. Not an old guy, but not looking like he's in his prime either. I was just going to get my jacket from the wall where I'd hung it up in the restaurant. Turned and bumped into him. I remember his face, his hair, his general outfit from a glimpse of no extreme details. But you know, dark shirt, jeans, boots, green jacket with a cream Sherpa-esque lined collar, etc. Just the basic immediate details one might recall. But by the time I said, "Oop, sorry," he was gone. Like, legitimately vanished. The restaurant was more or less open floor plan. Like yes, there were aisles with booths, but the guy and I were plenty tall enough to still be visible had he gone down one of those to our left or right. Had he gone to the right, he would have had to cross 10 feet, to get to the next aisle, as we were in the lobby portion where the bakery display and counter to pay were. The only other exits were the literal exit in front of me, so clearly visible, or the kitchen doors behind me, which there's no way he got past me when I was facing his direction. He just poofed, vanished like a ghost. I have no idea who the man was, how he did that. No one else was with me or standing in the area when I saw him, so no one could corroborate what I saw. I still remember him vividly though. He seemed just as surprised by me as I did him, but the shock in his face was immediately labeled in my mind as, "Whoops, I bumped into him." Now I wonder, am I crazy? Was it a ghost surprised to be seen? A parallel universe converging and he saw me vanish too? Just a hallucination that I randomly had one day and is now permanently ingrained into my mind? Like all of it sounds silly, but genuinely I'll never know. So it's sometimes fun to toss around the ideas given. I can never truly know which is right, if any. I do know I would have sworn later after we left, I saw him again on the street corner nearby. Right next to the same restaurant as we were heading home. But there's no way he got out of the doors of the lobby without me seeing him, and we immediately left, after I returned to my table, which was near the entrance itself too. So literally it would have been next to impossible for him to have gotten out there without me seeing him leave the building. But yeah, I'll never know who or what he was, or how he did that. Case file number 1745, written by Skin Aficionado. Comics Gone Astray, within a notebook secret way. I don't know what to say. I'm kind of having a mild freakout, and I'm not sure what I'm supposed to think. 2 days ago, I wrote a letter to somebody, so I grabbed a notebook from my nightstand. I know it was this notebook in particular, because on the very first page, there was a journal entry from when I had briefly attempted to write journals. I remember reading the journal entry, and then turning to the next page and writing what I needed to. When I finished, I skimmed through the rest of the notebook, and found a few pages of comic strips I had drawn from years back I had almost forgotten about. I ripped the page out that I needed. I still have it, and I've already checked the back of it, and continued on. Today, I decided to tidy up my room and saw the notebook. First page still has the same journal entry. Except now, the pages with the comic strips have disappeared. I know I did not rip them out for any reason. I have looked through every single page of this notebook, front to back, and they are nowhere to be found. I have even checked other notebooks I have stashed away in my closet, just in case, and they are not there either. It's like they just vanished. I feel like I'm losing my mind. I know that I saw them in that specific notebook just a few days ago. Now they've just disappeared. Case file number 1746, written by Irrelevant Trash. AirPods gone, AirPods found, a mystery unbound. I lost my AirPods about 2 years ago, just the individual buds, both of them. But I still kept the case, hoping I might find the earbuds again. This was in early 2022, and it's now 2024, but I still hadn't found them. So I was thinking about selling or throwing the case out. Just yesterday, I was laying in bed, but I felt something cold at my foot. I looked down, and there is a left earbud. Then I'm super confused at this point, because it's been 2 years and I never found them. It wasn't lodged in the bed or anything, and I constantly change my sheets. I looked around for the right earbud, and it was also right at my foot. Just to make sure they were mine and not some random AirPods, never bought any since I lost them, I put them into my case from 2 years ago, and it was the correct pair belonging to that case. What's weirder is the case and the left AirPod was almost dead, but the right AirPod was mostly charged after 2 years. I'm so confused, but everyone around me didn't really think much of it. Maybe I'm overreacting. I don't have any roommates. I never let anyone borrow them, and I would know if they were stolen. They were not between my mattress, they were not stuck between my toes for 2 years. But they work. Infinite AirPod glitch? To clear up some suspicions, they were not caught up in my sheets, a fitted cover, or any bed sheets or pillowcases. The Find My Phone app also said my AirPods have no location when I checked them the day before yesterday, the second I found them before reconnecting the AirPods to my phone. My mother did not steal the AirPods for 2 years, then order some Chinese knockoffs as a cover out of spite. This sounds very ridiculous, and that is not the case, as the second the AirPods were connected to the internet, my phone would have been notified as I kept pressing the Ring My AirPods function in my Find My Phone. There are no holes in my mattress, comforter, blanket, duvet, cover, sheets, pillows, pillowcases, etc. I do not own any pets, and never let anyone borrow them outside the house. Case file number 1747, written by Monchichi Salt. Symbols in Flux and a Tattoo Paradox. My forum has a line of individual symbols. They represent a specific time in my life with people I was once very close to. We're still all friends, but you know how life can get in the way of frequent hangouts as we get older. And I just realized that the tattoo turns 10 in July, if that matters. Each of these symbols are plain black lines, nothing fancy. Think along the idea of a simple heart, square, circle kind of deal. There are more than 3 though. We each had the symbol that represents yourself colored in, and kept it very simple by going in order of age. The oldest has the first mark colored in, the next oldest has a second, third has a third, and so on. Our group had a wide age range, the oldest being 7 years senior to the next in line, the closest gap being 5 years apart. It's not like we're talking about a few months or a handful of years apart. I'm pretty damn confident in my own age, and where I am in the lineup. I'm not deep in the middle child zone either. The one that represents me, the only colored one, has changed location, so obviously I made a few calls. No one else has noticed a change in theirs. Sent out a picture of mine. The person I swapped with reports their color ink faded out within the last few years. They only have the black lines. Cue the confusion amongst the group. It's agreed that this would have been noticed the day we all got them, or at some point over the last decade. My friends are not as open to this sort of subject, so it's just been left at how weird we never realized. This would not be my first glitch, nor will it be the first time I would rather believe my memory is slipping. However, just like the glitch that got me believing, it feels like I have witnesses. Why are they all just as confused if it was only my memory? And that's what brings me here to share it. Case file number 1748, written by Vainglory. Omen at Dawn, the Spirit of St. John? On December 22nd, 2022, at approximately 7 a.m., my wife heard 3 loud knocks that woke her up. Note, it was also still pitch black night at this time. They were in a set rhythm and sounded like they came from the side of our house, not our door. She heard the same 3 knocks again, loud and hard, and called me on my phone. I was sleeping downstairs because I had this pain that was so bad I couldn't sleep in the bed comfortably. The downstairs had one huge window on the back wall, looking out in the backyard, and another on the opposite wall, looking into the front yard and porch where the door is. She asked me if I had heard the knocking, and I said no. My dog hadn't reacted either, and she is pretty sensitive to these things. I told her she must have heard the pipes or something, and we hung up. Less than a minute after we hung up, I heard the knocking too. Loud and heavy, and 3 distinct knocks. Again, I was in the living room on the couch with the ability to see into both yards and see the front door. The knocks didn't sound like they came from the front door, but still looking out at the door, no one was there. This time my dog did react though, and honestly, the knocks terrified the crap out of me. My wife and I ran outside to try to find the source. Even brought my dog to see if she'd chase the source. Nothing. The street was empty and quiet, and my dog picked up no trace of something. We've never heard knocking like that since. Now the reason I remember the date clearly is because the next day I went to the hospital for my pain, had emergency surgery at 1 a.m. on Christmas Eve to drain an infected cyst that was causing me to go septic. There's some superstitions, particularly in Ireland, and we live in Northern Ireland, where 3 knocks and no one at the door signifies a death in the family. I swear we were being warned my death was coming if we didn't act. Case file number 1749, written by Insert Coins to Begin. Boots on the floor, turning a glitch so hardcore. This happened about 15 years ago at a ranch-style house in the middle of the country, surrounded by farmland and sparsely spaced houses. I haven't talked to my dad in years, and while he claimed to be religious, he more so thought he was than him actually being religious. I have been a very headstrong skeptic, and was a typical teenage atheist and still am an atheist, but I have become more spiritual in my late 20s and 30s. The story. My dad and I were home, and he was in his office room with the radio very loud, and I was in the living room working on my college work. My dad can't hear very well at all. However, we both heard the kitchen door open with a pop, squeaking kind of sound, which was a typical sound when opened. Work boots stomping on the kitchen floor. We all wore work boots because we were outside laborers and walked heavy, and the sound of both the work boots being taken off and being dropped on the kitchen floor, which is what we, my dad, little brother and I, did, and a very common noise. My dad and I both heard it and figured it was my little brother coming home. However, the outside free-roaming dogs hadn't barked, and the driveway alarms didn't go off. Maybe the dogs were out roaming, or maybe the driveway didn't pick up the car. How we tried to rationalize it. I called my little brother, and he was 45 minutes away? My dad and I searched the outside and the entire house, ground floor and basement. Every room. It was just us. I'm not religious, but something isn't right about that house. At all. And a decade plus later, my little brother still swears it wasn't him. He has stories about seeing shadow people for years and something following him on and in his car. And many, many more stories. My eyes watered again as I edited this, and I got goosebumps typing this all these years later. Many, many weird or questionable things happened in that house. My older sister swears she saw what she thought was my little brother when he was just a toddler. Something during the middle of the night where she got up, she thought she saw my little brother in the hallway by the bathroom. It wasn't my little brother. She locked herself in the bathroom and wouldn't come out until someone woke up and knocked on the door. This was 20 plus years ago, and eventually, as she got older, she wouldn't talk about it anymore. But for the longest time, when she asked about the story, she said the same thing. Case also file 1688. Vanished in sight through a flickering night. I think the flickering effect is what we might call a phase change. When matter or energy changes phases, usually matter, there's a process involved. It doesn't happen to everything all at once. You know, when you boil water, it doesn't all boil away instantly. Well, unless you have insane levels of heat. But I think a similar effect applies here. I think if you're crossing over to a different universe, perhaps, even in multiverse sight, it doesn't happen instantaneously. The process takes a bit of time, especially if it involves your physical corporeal body, not just your soul. So I think you had a very, very rare glimpse at this process actually happening in real time. And it was a mega quack standard with plenty of witnesses. So that's good. No need to feel crazy. This is real. It's reality. Reality's freaking weird. Case also file 1689. The Forest Chill with the Doppelganger Thrill. So this sounds like an incredibly peaceful habit to have. A very tranquil place to visit. I need to go hiking again. It's been too long. I mean, I hike in a local park, but it's not the same. That is very tended to. Now in effect, I don't believe this was a doppelganger, because you didn't really feel or describe terrifying vibes, just unusual. I think you saw yourself as a ripple through time, an echo, if you will. You did see yourself as you were going to be in a few minutes, but you're only able to see yourself in the localized area, the bubble, if you will, of space-time distortion. And this did not translate into the privy, because you saw no additional deposits, which is a funny way to say what we all know it means, but yes, no additional deposits because you hadn't made it yet. You were seeing what was going to happen. You saw what has the highest probability to occur. Now, in very short time frames, it's not too difficult to predict the future, at least at the macro level. At the quantum level, forget it, impossible. There is no hidden information to predict. The universe literally materializes everything at the fundamental level in real time. There is no plan, if you will. No future set in stone. Unless we're talking about replay theory, which is a different thing entirely. Won't go in the weeds on that one, but in this case I think it was just seeing a very probable future in a localized area right in front of you. Very interesting, but nothing to fear. Now time for the quote of the day. Prot. The universe will expand, then it will collapse back on itself, then expand again. It will repeat this process forever. What you don't know is that when the universe expands again, everything will be as it is now. Whatever mistakes you make this time around, you will live through on your next pass. Every mistake you make, you will live through again and again forever. So my advice to you is to get it right this time around, because this time is all you have. This is a technical way to describe fate, that the universe is caught in this repeating time loop, the universe itself being constructed of time. But as we understand a time loop, it is effectively that. The universe expands, everything happens, and then it recontracts, and boom, Big Bang again, and on and on. This could be true. Personally, I think because of quantum mechanics, even if this theory is true, the big crunch as they call it, that doesn't mean that we will repeat exactly as we did this time. In fact, even though we're starting from the same parameters, things could be entirely different, because nothing is solidified at the fundamental level. Now maybe this only impacts our free will. So maybe everything happens exactly the same way up until the point where sentient life with free will emerges. And then things can change. Maybe a whole new set of souls come into play, a different character set. Interesting way to think about it. But yes, if we are stuck in this continual loop, you better hope you made the best decisions and you got the best luck. Because for a lot of people, an infinite loop of horror is not fair. So I don't think it's that. But it's an interesting thought experiment nevertheless. And this was from the movie K-Pax, which is a fantastic, underrated movie. Classic. Go watch it. Question surface 1690. A plane in the sky? Frozen. Oh my. So yes, it's true. There is a very real effect, and what you described is called the parallax effect. You can also see this with birds, various birds that can sort of hover in one spot. Now they are actually hovering, but it requires a certain amount of wind as well. And I don't think you can actually hover with a plane. It's just the appearance of it, the fake illusion. But in this case, no, because silence is the key. If you were that close to a plane, and they were actually flying in air, unless their engines burned out, and they weren't on at all, but I don't think that's the case. Given every detail you mention, my guess is nothing to do with the parallax effect, everything to do with a space-time portal, a ripple in time and space connecting to a different universe, and you were simply seeing in that universe, or ahead in time in this universe. So maybe the plane was going to be there, but you were seeing a sort of snapshot in time or in the multiverse spectrum. Hard to say which one, but my gut is it's just multiverse sight, but usually those are limited to very small areas. So this occupying the entire volume of a plane is very unusual. And I do think sometimes these space-time portals can appear and consume an entire plane, and that is how sometimes planes vanish entirely. Not necessarily related to the Bermuda Triangle, but perhaps more prone there, for ships as well. Question surface 1691. The boot puzzle? With a coin to unravel. It's funny because every single glitch now, or almost every single one, can be reduced or involve space-time portals, or dead pockets of space-time that we can still see through and interact with. But in this case, it seems like objects go out of phase, but they still bind to us. They're still tethered to us. it isn't just that light goes right through them, it's that you can't physically touch it anymore. But the object is still, maybe just in code and information, bound to us, and then eventually reemerges. What the catalyst for that is, I have no clue. Is it really some dude in the real world pushing a button, like it phase out, phase back in? It seems so weird because these objects, what does it matter for these objects? Is it maybe the universe, the program corrupting, and then eventually someone notices and fixes it? But sometimes the gap in time is so large, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. So I mean, explaining why this happens is sort of easy, but explaining the motive behind it, because it seems like a will is involved. It can't be random. I don't know. I am stumped on that part. Now time for the quote of the day. Will Robinson. Danger, Will Robinson, danger! From another classic sci-fi movie, Lost in Space. There is a Netflix adaptation, which I haven't seen. I should. I hear it's decent, but I'm talking about the movie back in the day. It was one of those movies that might not be great, but because I saw it as a kid, there's nostalgia involved, and I can't get over it. I always rewatch it here and there, and it always lands. The monkey is interesting. But I won't spoil anymore. Of course, they are lost in space, which I don't think that's a spoiler. It's kind of given the name of the movie, but go watch it. And danger, Will Robinson, danger. Okay, Sensor File 1692. Dr. Dan, the Plague Man. Yeah, quantum immortality indeed. The plague, so-called, claimed your life in the originating universe, which is very sad to think about. Every time I come back to that, in that universe, people just think you died. Your soul persists in this universe and many, many others. And so, yeah, in this universe, you did indeed see Dr. Dan, and he did save your life. But the Dr. Dan in this universe, which is a big difference, is of Indian descent, not Australian. So that's a massive difference. So this universe, it might be very far away from your originating one. Maybe the plague, so-called, took you out in many, many universes up until this one. It explains a lot. But it is nevertheless bittersweet knowing so many yous are gone in those universes. It's just the mourning process for, everyone in those universes that loved you, and now you're gone. I can't get over that fact. I hope I've never died, but we probably all have. I wonder if there's anyone that goes through an entire lifetime and never dies once before old age claims them. Maybe, if someone is very sheltered. But it is so easy to die. So many things can kill you. Try to be safe as you can, to spare the emotional trauma from those who love you here. But of course, sometimes things happen and we can't control it, and it's not your fault at all, okay? I'm not blaming you in any way. But I'm just saying take the measures you can to try not to die. Even though we have apparently, a billion trillion cat lives. In some ways, that makes me want to be more risky. Go rock climbing and skydiving again. Not sure I mentioned that. I went skydiving when I was 19. Anyways, no tangents. I'm good. Next story. Okay, Sensor File 1693. Gazebo gone? It's a backyard phenomenon. So yeah, I couldn't see this happening, even if it was one of those gazebos that is mostly just like metal rods and cloth. But if it was a wooden gazebo, no chance at all. Even if it was one of the lighter gazebos, they're still 100 pounds, 200 pounds. You need a lot of wind to be able to lift it up, and then for it to land squarely as it did? No way. Maybe if there was a tornado in the area, but otherwise, this one I don't know. It can't be DOP, can it? It's almost like quantum tunneling through the fence. At the smallest level for nuclear fusion to happen, particles, usually electrons, can zip across very small areas, not travel through them at all, but just appear from one place to another. It's becoming an issue for CPU design as well. Because the transistor gates are so small, electrons can zip through and turn from a 0 to a 1 or 1 to 0, without that being the intent. But this only happens at the very, very tiniest of levels. So, to have this happen at the macro scale is unimaginable. But technically not impossible. If you wait long enough, anything can spawn from nothing. But it is so unlikely to happen that it shouldn't. DOP doesn't fit. Quantum immortality doesn't fit because everyone was surprised that it happened. Wonder how the neighbors reacted. I don't know. Very mystical gazebo indeed. Okay, so it's file 1694. When lost and found, my jaw hit the ground. The turtles were reunited. Nice. But again, it comes back to DOP events where the object disappears, okay? They reappear even though the original owner is far away in a different location in space-time. Why do they reappear at all next to the person? If they disappeared and then reappeared in the originating spot, that would make a bit more sense. And you could say, yeah, that's just entirely random. But this, no. They are still tethered to you. They go out of phase. But the properties, the code is like imprinted on you. And no matter where you go, they'll reappear near to where you are eventually. So maybe one day, the 2 tennis balls I've lost will just drop on my head. And no matter where I am, if I go visit Japan, they could drop over there. Now time for the quote of the day. Dr. Hannibal Lecter. Our scars have the power to remind us that the past was real. It's almost like an Inception, where they have the spinny thing, whatever you call those, to remind them of if this is a dream or not. You have your token that comes with you. A scar is similar to that. It binds you to the past, so you know this already happened. It's not just a faulty memory. It's real. Now, I'm not saying Dr. Hannibal Lecter was a role model. Of course not. But it is interesting how the trials and tribulations of our lives, if they leave a mark, well, it's a postmark in history itself. It's something you can rely on to know what really happened, beyond just memory. Kind of trying to put a positive spin on a negative. Do you have any scars? I have a few, but nothing major. I just have like my middle finger is broken because when I was young, it got caught in a car door as it was slammed shut and broke apart. Never reset, but not a critical thing or anything. There's no pain, just the bone grew at an angle. Yep, that's it. Okay, so on to file 1695. Reality blip and headphone trip. How much power does our mind have in altering the properties of physical matter itself? At the fundamental level, one theory proposed is quantum field theory. The idea is, everything we know, energy and matter, is merely an excitation of various fields. There are 17 different fields. For instance, an electron is an excitation of the electron field. The field permeates all of space-time, and in any given area, you have this excitation, which is the particle itself. Now, these excitations contain tremendous quantities of energy, and to either extinguish the particle as we understand it, or to create a new one from nothing, requires or generates tremendous quantities of energy. But if you were simply to alter the properties of a molecule, of a macro-level object, maybe you could do that without necessarily needing much energy. If the total mass remains the same in terms of electrons, neutrons, and protons, well, in theory, it shouldn't really require much energy besides the momentum required to move objects around. Now there's chemistry, covalent bonds and other things that in chemistry still altering properties of an object would in technicality produce energy, so doing this should cause an explosion. But maybe there's a way that our minds are able to do it in beyond the physical limitations of chemistry. So maybe your own mind, just by thinking about it, created this. It could also be quantum immortality, but there's nothing in the story that would lead me to believe that you just suddenly died. That would be strange. So I think it's literally your mind morphing the composition of these headphone cords, and that's it. In theory, it should be possible-ish, maybe? That's as far as I can go on that one. Okay, so let's file 1696. Enigma revealed in the ring that time concealed. So is that part of it? These objects that disappear, they don't just phase out, they literally skip ahead in time to where they know we were going to be later on in the future. So they're not technically bound to us, they just appear where we are supposed to be. I guess this would require replay theory, so the future we experience now is set in stone because we already played it out. It would be very easy to take an object from the now and then place it wherever you are in the future. It's not so much traveling through space, it's just traveling through time. Of course, it doesn't explain why it happens, who is triggering it to happen. Are these just random errors? Blips in the excitations of quantum fields for no apparent reason? I don't know if that is ever going to be answerable. I hope so. Maybe there's a story one day that'll reveal beyond the curtain just a bit more, because it's a head-scratcher for now. Case notes for file 1697. We were locked outside, while our keys took a ride. So you leave your home, you lock the gate, has to be locked and the key removed for it to be locked, and then the keys are just gone and reappear inside the unlocked area. So, okay. Clearly they vanished. Was this another DOP event? Did some other force, an entity, a poltergeist, a ghost, steal them and just play this prank on you? It's not exactly that malicious, but it's also certainly not random. It could be DOP, but usually DOP, the object doesn't return that quickly. A minor DOP event. The only thing I can say for sure is that it's not random. Now time for the joke of the day. Why don't some couples go to the gym? Because some relationships don't work out. Though the irony of this quote is going to the gym and maintaining fit bodies for each other is probably one of the best ways to ensure the relationship lasts. Or, a component of that. Funny joke, but go to the gym. Or at least, go on hikes and do calisthenics. That's free and very good for you. Not just for the relationship. Case note for file 1698. Wedding pics and universe tricks. Yeah, I'm befuddled on this one too, because it can't be quantum immortality. If it was, you're in a different universe and you didn't give your pictures to your boyfriend in that universe, why would your roommate then remember you doing it and talking about it? Unless you died after that discussion happened, but before you gave it to him. Maybe in this universe you were going to, but just forgot. Sort of, but that doesn't explain why you have extra. In this universe you also have extra pictures that are just appearing randomly? It's almost like something was altering your memories and then also inserting a new picture in the mess. I don't see why anyone would do that, but maybe it is the universe glitching out, and there's no reason that a glitch couldn't involve our own memories. Maybe the glitches are happening in our heads too, which is much more disconcerting in my view. Case answer file 1699. Dinner's done, but the night has just begun. So most likely astral projection. Your brother, unbeknownst to him, was projecting his soul. Now, what would be funny is if the brother that ran up the stairs was actually the astral projection, and the brother that went in the bathroom was the real corporeal self, and you just were freaked out by the wrong one. There's nothing necessarily involved in this that requires you to be freaked out. The soul detaching from the body and materializing sort of corporeally doesn't involve any malice and often is just an accidental process. I think it's more of a fun event than something to fear. Oh, and also, rice-a-ronis are kind of mid-tier. Not my favorite thing, so I understand hating it. Now time for the joke of the day. A man sees a sign in front of a house. Talking dog for sale. He rings the bell, and the owner tells him the dog is in the backyard. The man goes into the backyard and asks the dog, "Can you talk?" The dog replies, "Yep, I sure can." Astonished, the man asks, "So what's your story?" The dog looks up and says, "Well, I discovered I could talk when I was young. I wanted to help the government, so I told the CIA. In no time, they had me traveling around the world, sitting in rooms with spies and world leaders, because no one would ever suspect a talking dog. I was able to gather information that no human could. I was a top agent for 8 years." The man is amazed and runs back to the owner, asking how much he wants for the dog. The owner says, $10. $10? Why on earth are you selling him for so cheap? Because he's a liar. He didn't do any of that stuff. I mean, he can still talk, but yeah, maybe don't buy a dog that is also a pathological liar. I could foresee some issues with that. Case answer file 1700. Golf surprise with Barry's timely rise. I think you and your dad were onto something. I think this was a guardian angel event where this guardian angel wanted you to interact with Barry, you and your dad. Maybe just one of you, but probably both of you. And so arranged enough dominoes of fate in order to lead you towards meeting him again. It's like, this is your clue, guys. Do you get it? Come on, catch on. That's the process in the guardian angel's mind. Of course, there's still free will. I don't think guardian angels can force anything to happen. So if you don't see the sign and act on it, well, there's not much they can do beyond heavily weighing the cards, so to speak. My guess is that Barry, being in both of your lives, would somehow have massively improved your lives or changed them, altered them in some way. Maybe prevented a tragedy that could have been avoided with Barry's help. Something along those lines. Case answer file 1701. Anna's necklace bond from the beyond. My assumption, the girl's your friend's mother, Anna, passed away. A fragment of her soul lingered behind, tethered to your friend, and Anna saw that you were jumping out, that the necklace was important to you because you tugged at it first. You lost it in the water, but then Anna retrieved it, and then in the only other place she was bound to, her own urn, her own ashes, she returned it there, because she knew, yeah, she's going to come here eventually, and she'll see it. Or probably will. Simple retrieval, not DOP in this case, but from a real human soul. Expert lost and found, indeed. Even though this is all explainable, I think it doesn't make it any less incredible. Now time for the quote of the day. Tyler Durden. You are not your job. You're not how much money you have in the bank. You're not the car you drive. You're not the contents of your wallet. You're not your freaking khakis. From the movie Fight Club. People do assign their value tremendously to the money they have, their material possessions, everything like that. But no, who you are really is your personality, your choices, the things you act upon, not the things you've accumulated. That isn't to say that money doesn't matter at all, or that wanting to have more money is bad. It's just there's a threshold where if you cross it and you become obsessed more towards the obsession part, that's when it becomes a problem. And I think a lot of society, especially in the US, is geared so much towards these material things and losing sight of what really matters, having free time to spend with people that you care about. Is there anything that could matter more than that? I don't think so. Like everything in life, it's always a balance, and try not to let it skew too far in one direction. Okay, so it's found 1702. Barnyard Bliss or Dusk's mystical abyss. I don't think what you saw was heaven, per se, but I think it was a creation of your mind brought on by the harmonies of the music you were playing and hearing. Sort of think of it, the music was tugging on all the correct synapses in your brain to conjure this vision. And yeah, most people don't have visions when they listen to music. They might feel euphoric or have tremendous emotional response, but not visions. Still, I wouldn't discount the vision. I think it still matters. And I think it might just have unlocked a certain ability in your own mind. My guess is you're going to have more visions moving forward. Maybe not always triggered by music, but something else. I would keep a lookout for anyone that looks like the woman you saw in this vision. In real life. My guess is she's of special significance to you, or at least will be. Case answer file 1703. Johnny's Echo with the time travel memo. So when you first saw Johnny a decade ago, I suspect to him it was still normal time in your current time now. For him, he probably crossed some sort of space-time portal, time vortex. So for a brief period of time, he was stuck in the past. Although in that case, if it was actual time travel to the past, to avoid paradoxes, he would have to be in a different universe. So he was essentially a multiverse time traveler. Pretty incredible, right? But from his perspective, it was just you in boarding school and, you were already friends, so that he probably went back to that school, that boarding area, and was like, hey, why didn't you recognize me? We interact every other day. In what original universe, without this time influence, did you get to know Johnny? Were you always sort of destined to? Again, I don't believe in destiny, but it is interesting. Without the catalyst of seeing this person back in the day, why would you become friends with him later on? Maybe that is just the original catalyst and, everything else is a time loop, sort of. A multiverse time loop. Now time for the quote of the day. Phil Connors. When Chekhov saw The Long Winter, he saw a winter bleak and dark and bereft of hope. Yet we know that winter is just another step in the cycle of life. But standing here among the people of Punxsutawney and basking in the warmth of their hearths and hearts, I couldn't imagine a better fate than a long and lustrous winter. From the movie Groundhog Day. Well, if anyone here is a regular, you'll know that I love winter. I don't like the sun, I get migraines from the sun, I love cold weather, the absence of bugs. Anyone who likes summer is strange to me. I mean, I get, being outside, shirt off, going in the lake or something, sure, that's fine. But it's a very small component of summer. For the rest of the time, you're just there sweltering in the stupid heat, bugs crawling in your ears, and just give me that long, dark, lustrous winter. Even if it would be a repeating day forever. I could live with that, as long as there's pie involved. Okay, so for 1704. The hallway glitch and a mystery switch. Quantum immortality will be so disorienting if you're not aware of the phenomena. Truly will make you question your own sanity and mind and all of reality. Though there is a small hiccup. The pictures you have confirm that the light switch was always there. You have picture evidence, so that's hard to disprove. But your son not remembering the switch either, that's a wrinkle. The only thing I can think of is that both you and your son both died in the original universe, and now you're transposed to this new universe together in tandem. Tandem quantum immortality, we'll call it. I think that does happen sometimes. Though it probably isn't a hard requirement. If you die with a friend at the same time, maybe you'll go to the nearest universe, and usually that is the same one. But in some cases, I could foresee that that wouldn't be the case, so you'd go to different ones. But yeah, maybe this is the case where you're both just in a new universe, so both of you don't remember. That explains the incongruity. And there are events that could trigger that. I saw a video of, it was just a typical suburban neighborhood, and 1 minute everything's okay, the next minute an entire home explodes from a gas leak. I mean, it looked like a freaking bomb, like a gigantic military-grade bomb. No, it was just a gas leak. And the people there wouldn't feel anything. They would just be 1 second there, and then the next they're in a new universe, and they don't really, you wouldn't remember, because sometimes in quantum immortality you remember your death. In this case, you wouldn't remember a giant explosion. Your brain wouldn't even have time to process that stimuli and imprint it on your soul. It's just, at flash, you're done. So I think that's probably what happened. Caissons file 1705, Strange Apparition, and a Mother's Impossible Vision. Okay, so this story started off kind of like a horror story, giving me very horror vibes, but then it twisted at the end towards something much more wholesome. I think it was a sort of time travel event, maybe even brought on by technology, because it seemed like this girl was very aware she wasn't supposed to be seen, yet accidentally she was. And I can buy that. If you're able to travel to the past and you go visit yourself as you were a child, and maybe in her future, both of you are already dead as parents, could be 30 years in the future, for all I know, 40. If you had a chance to see your parents again, if they were dead in your current timeline, I mean, you'd probably take it. Interesting. But my gut says it truly was your daughter. Now time for the quote of the day. Patrick Bateman. There is an idea of a Patrick Bateman, some kind of abstraction, but there is no real me, only an entity, something illusory. And although I can hide my cold gaze, and you can shake my hand and feel flesh gripping yours, and maybe you can even sense our lifestyles are probably comparable, I simply am not here. Describing the existence of a psychopath. Someone who is there. Really, I would qualify it as an NPC. A non-playable character. An automaton. Someone who doesn't really have free will, in this case. The soul is either not there or improperly connected. Maybe the latter. Makes sense. The compatibility from a soul to a body might not be as simple as we think it is. It's not like, just some energy wisps into you and then automatically everything is hunky-dory. There might be problems sometimes with that process. And maybe they can't be corrected. So then you have these people that are psychopaths. They're sentient, but there's nothing there. And that's kind of terrifying, to me anyways. Caissons file 1706, Geocache Glitch or Time Twisting Hitch. So I've never heard of geocaching, but it sounds pretty interesting. Kind of like a mystery egg hunt, but on digital scale. The handwriting is what throws me for a loop. If it was just digital information, that can fairly easily cross between multiple universes, so you had solved it in a different universe and then came over here. But this is beyond that. The handwriting was yours. It was your own hint. I mean, you would kind of know if it was really your own hint. If you read it. It's like, yeah, I would have written that. So, unless it was temporary multiverse sight, so you just saw a universe where you had solved it. But then when you come back to this one, it wouldn't be solved, so you could go back and check it online. It's almost some kind of weird, wonky Mobius strip of time, where you're in a loop that isn't related to cause and effect. The Merovingian in The Matrix would be very displeased with effect preceding cause. Bizarre. Caissons file 1707, Candy's Reflection and the Time Connection. So yeah, the theme of the day indeed, time. And I view time as a sequential snapshot of reality, every frame layered like a video. Now, our decisions still impact those frames and the future frames to come, but maybe you can, in some cases, alter where the frames are placed. And you can only alter it from a potential future. But maybe indeed you are most likely, most probable to become a nurse. And maybe this is all triggered from space-time portals. I don't know, honestly. Is it willed? It doesn't really make sense to me. Why would someone care if you saw yourself being a nurse later on? Why would your name be Candy? Some anomalies going on. The you from a future from a different universe too? I mean, it's all possible, I suppose. It's very hard to say. But I'm trying to think of it. How would I feel if that happened to me? If I saw a picture-perfect me right in front of myself, and then they just vanish quickly after? I don't know. The doppelganger time weirdness going on. It would be difficult to handle, for sure. But I would try to strike up a conversation with myself. I mean, would you? Be hard to resist. Caissons file 1708. Lip gloss and shopping chaos. Okay, this is one of the craziest glitches I've ever read. It's not dangerous or directly shocking like the first second you read it, but when you take it into account, this is like duplicate object phenomena, which is pretty common, but on steroids, taken to another plane of existence, But I was trying to think, how could I incorporate a solution to this in the mundane realm? Because how I like to do it. I like to solve these things. But what if there was this, I guess it's a prank, sort of, but you weren't told, which I don't get, but maybe some people are crazy and want to prank people and never tell them. But anyways, what if someone in the back room was checking the security cameras, observing what you bought, had an accomplice on radio, and they would, after you left the area, go back and fill up a card with exactly what you bought, which they were seeing on the security camera, and then left the card somewhere that you knew you would go back to search for your purse. Of course, they also somehow took your purse from you, from right under you without you ever leaving the card. So that's pretty improbable, but it's kind of funny to think about because it's not impossible. Some of these people might be responsible for these glitch stories that we're reading. Not all of them at all, but I think sometimes it could be possible. That's kind of funny. If you're going to prank someone like that, that's awesome. I approve, but tell them after the fact. That's all. Don't gaslight them for the rest of their lives, My gut says it's just the universe being wonky, but hey, prank, always a possibility. Now time for the joke of the day. The parrot with an attitude. A man buys a parrot from a pet store. The parrot has a bad attitude and uses inappropriate language. The man tries everything to change the bird's attitude and clean up its language, but nothing works. Finally, in a moment of frustration, he puts the parrot in the freezer. For a few minutes, he hears the bird squawking and kicking. Then suddenly, all is quiet. Fearing he has hurt the bird, the man opens the freezer. The parrot calmly steps out and says, "I believe I may have offended you with my rude and inappropriate language. I am sincerely remorseful and will endeavor to correct my behavior." Astonished, the man is about to ask what changed the parrot's behavior when the bird continues. "May I ask, what did the chicken do?" The first time I read this, it's so perfect. Yeah. The chicken is in the freezer, dead. The chicken bird, and I don't want to be dead too. Don't eat me. Don't eat me. Case notes in file 1709. Randy Lilly and the unopened box of eternal mystery. Now I need to know what the hell is inside that eternal mystery sparkling box. From these childlike time travelers, or dare I say, aliens? But seriously, I would have to smash this box open. No lie. Maybe you tried and it's just so durable you can't break it open? With anything known to man? Because it's not made by mankind? Or maybe made by us in the way distant future? It's so strange, because if time travel is technologically possible in the future, you would think it would be very difficult to do, regulated. But given, to avoid paradoxes, you're going back in time to a different universe, technically you can't directly affect your own original timeline, so maybe no one cares because of that? You could mess up other timelines though, but I guess it's not your own, so who cares? I don't know. Curious. I swear, if you open that box, it's like this little device that gives unlimited energy or something, or maybe gives you superpowers. I would freaking go ripped from swinging a sledgehammer on it to eventually break it open. Has to work sometime. Okay, so it's for 1710. Demonic growl in the night when forest lasers take sight. Nope. I am with your giant friend. Book it out of there instantaneously. The car catching up probably was just a coincidental space-time portal. I don't think it's related to the haunting forest area. But another thing I've been wondering about. Just death, just having remains in an area isn't enough. There's a road in Russia where prisoners were used to build it. I forgot the name of it. It's called the Road of Bones, though colloquially known as, because so many people died building it that they literally buried their remains inside the foundation of the road. So you're driving over thousands of people's dead bodies, their skeletons, under the road. But yet, I don't think there's any accounts, or very sparingly, of people being haunted or anything weird going on that road. So human remains are not enough. There's some other catalyst involved in an area being haunted after the fact of a gruesome death. I don't know what it is. Maybe it does involve murder, because I don't think people on the road were murdered. They just died of exhaustion and, disease and stuff like that. So maybe murder is required. Now time for the joke of the day. The Genie and the Three Wishes. A man stumbles upon an old lamp in his attic, and when he rubs it, a genie appears. The genie says, "I will grant you 3 wishes, but whatever you wish for, your ex-wife will get double." The man agrees and makes his first wish. "I want a mansion." Poof! A mansion appears, and at the same time, his ex-wife gets 2 mansions. For his second wish, he says, "I want $1 billion." Poof! $1 billion appear, and his ex-wife gets $2 billion. For his third and final wish, he thinks long and hard. Finally, he says, "Genie, I want you to scare me half to death." Clever. So his ex is not long for the world now. Well done. Case also file 1711. The miracle turn that avoids our burn. I really wish quantum immortality was a testable phenomenon. All we can have now are accounts of where it happens to someone per their experience, which is good, but you can never confirm it for yourself. Unless you're in that kind of environment where an accident or something was supposed to kill you, you know it, there's no way to avoid it, and yet it doesn't. In reality it does, you just don't experience that death. Which is interesting, because a lot of people do remember their deaths in quantum immortality. But in some cases, unless you're directly there to witness it, maybe your consciousness cuts out prior, so there's no imprint on your soul to carry it to your memories in the new host body. That would be the advice I could give. If you're in a situation where it looks like there's absolutely no way out and you're going to die, close your eyes. Try not to engage with that experience. And then when you're in the new reality, you won't even remember it. Because I can't imagine much worse than remembering your own death. And I'm sure you remember the pain of it and everything. Oof. So, close your eyes. Case answer file 1712. Twins in the crowd and the photograph in shroud. Right, so doppelgangers are common, but it's especially not common to have photographic evidence just deleted from a server. And I'm assuming from the phone as well where you took it from, or probably would have been deleted a long time ago. But if it hadn't been, it probably would have been by whatever force did this. Reminds me of the scene in Back to the Future, towards the end, where the photograph is there, you know what it's supposed to be, but one person in it is fading out. Is this a willed force, or more along the lines of, you took a photograph of a version of you that wasn't supposed to be occupying this universe, and eventually when that error was corrected, the photographic evidence was also removed, because it never happened. I guess that's interesting, but it does mean that memory can't be wiped, because that still exists in your mind. I do wonder, what would have happened if you had approached this girl, especially with your sister in tow? Can only imagine. Now time for the quote of the day. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. In the beginning, the universe was created. This has made a lot of people very angry, and been widely regarded as a bad move. I do love that quote. It is kind of silly. The movie is somewhat cynical, and I wouldn't say pessimistic or nihilistic, but it does make you feel like, oh wow, we as humans don't really matter much, do we? Now on the cosmic scale, that might be true. But I'm still glad the universe exists, with one caveat. As long as it's not infinitely repeating, as in it expands and then contracts back to itself and then reoccurs exactly the same way. That would suck, because so many people have terrible lives that are not their fault. Born with diseases or in war-torn countries. You know, what of the children born in North Korea now? They didn't choose that fate, and there's really no way around it. So yeah, an infinitely repeating universe would be hell. But, as long as it's not that, I'm good for the ride. Case also file 1713. Robes, slippers, and Hilton jitters. Okay, so yeah, multiverse space-time portal. you crossed into a different universe, one that was wildly different. And I think those portals, they can transcend to faraway locations, faraway universes, where in quantum immortality, generally speaking, it's right next door. But this would be clear evidence that those portals can transmit you far away. Though, where was it? Was it in the hallway, or rather the elevator itself, acting as a kind of buffer between realities? We've seen multiple accounts where people board elevators in hotels often, and then they're just not in the same hotel anymore. So hotels acting sort of like a Faraday cage, but for space-time itself. Elevators are so bizarre, yet I'm not really that afraid of them, even knowing all this, because the frequency is still very, very, very low, given how many people take elevators. But there is something about them that stumps us. Okay, Songs File 1714. Gaming Night Delight turns into a fright. I think your instincts are probably correct that this was some sort of AI scam. With only a small snippet of someone's voice, you can replicate their voice pretty accurately, not 100%, but like 85-90% of the way. There's this website called 11 Labs, where if you do this, you input your own voice, you can have it narrate almost anything. Which is interesting given my line of work. And it's in part why I decided to go on camera, because I didn't want people to think that, oh, I'm just using an AI program to do this. No, it is me. It's YouTube, right? If I remove the you, well, it's just tube, and it's like any other fictional thing you can watch. It's not what I wanted. But it is kind of interesting and scary at the same time, the advent of new technology and how quickly it's advancing for AI systems. Makes you wonder what the future, even in 5 years, is going to be, let alone 50. Can't even begin to imagine. None of us can. Though on the story, if it was a scam, it seems like a very small amount of money to try to scam. So I don't know, maybe it was your girlfriend from a different universe and the lines just got jumbled along the way. Hard to say, but it almost seems more likely to be the latter. Because again, of how small the amount of money scammed is, it doesn't seem worth it. Especially for such an advanced kind of scam. What do you think? Now time for the quote of the day. V for Vendetta. Behind this mask, there is more than just flesh. Beneath this mask, there is an idea. And ideas are bulletproof. They sure are. But ideas are like water. They can erode away stone, but they take a long time to build up momentum. And even when the momentum is there, the erosion is very slow. So be careful about ideas, because they can spread. They can only be cured with better ideas. Very dangerous. But as they say, the pen is mightier than the sword. Very true. Case notes for file 1715. Sink, sink, think. So back in the day when I still had hair, I actually dyed my hair blonde. I don't know why. It was a weird phase. Just thought that was funny. Reading this story reminded me of that. But yeah, it seems like a multiverse crossover. Though, if it's persistent to the extent it was, then it must have been quantum immortality. What is the catalyst? Did one of the hairstylists kill you? That's grim, but also kind of funny to think death by hairstylist. I don't even want to imagine the gruesome details involved in that. No thanks. Okay, Songs file 1716. 4 years gone, and now it's on. Classic de-rendered object, DOP. But it's kind of ironic, given that it happened to a video game cartridge. And again, if you don't know, video games have this process where the camera renders what you're seeing, or dictates what is rendered. So if it's not in your field of view, it simply doesn't exist. It might exist on the back-end in code, but it isn't being processed by the CPU or GPU, which is a very good way to save on computational resources, and I think exactly how our universe simulation works. Okay, so it's file 1717. The echo of hello, but he didn't show. Yeah, so you hopped over to a different universe in that instant, or he did over to yours. But because there were no other differences in your universe, I'm guessing it was a landlord that was bumped into by, in his universe when he went back, no one. So you were both very confused for different reasons. Also, living with roommates can be fun. Through most of my 18 to 25, I lived with a lot of roommates. One house was like 4 other roommates in one. It was a big house though, but you get used to it. And even though I'm an introvert, there's something pleasant about that, knowing there's other people around. Now time for the quote of the day. From Bruce Almighty. Parting your soup is not a miracle, Bruce. It's a magic trick. A single mom who's working 2 jobs and still finds the time to take her kid to soccer practice? That's a miracle. I really like the message of that movie, where you can't just wish away your problems. And what should really be commended is people just going about their day, doing normal jobs, a lot of manual labor. It's good for the soul. There's no doubt about that. Trust in Morgan Freeman. He does have good advice, at least in his roles. And he just says it so well. Case also file 1718. Dad's return, but a new voice to learn? I think it's a jumbled signal issue. Or again, if this is a simulation, then our data, our actions, can be translated into frequency, into data. So the type of voice your dad has from a different universe transmitted over to this one. Which isn't much of a stretch. I think information transferring is much more common than physical matter. Though I think it was the same soul, just a different corporeal form. That is a thought though. What if you died, you go through quantum immortality, your soul transmits to a different you in a different universe, but it's different enough where your body is different, where you have a different voice, a different face, a different hairstyle, that's not so big a deal, but a different voice and everything. That would be wild and trippy. I've never read a story yet where someone woke up and they felt like they were in the wrong body. They remember their face being different. Maybe that'll happen, but I'm guessing for the you in a different universe to be that divergent from the you in this universe, the gap between universes would have to be so massive, it just isn't something that usually happens. But I don't think it's impossible. Again, that would be trippy. Case also file 1719. The vase lost, leaving me star-crossed. An isolated region of space-time surrounding the vase, and that created this rewinding effect, where not only did it reappear, it was fixed. I wonder if the candy, the bubblegum wrappers were still back in it. My guess is they were, even if you took them out before. Again, this was a time reset, localized only to that vase. So if you want more gum, you know where to go. Now time for the joke of the day. What do Alexander the Great and Winnie the Pooh have in common? They have the same middle name. Indeed. Case file number 1720. The Mind's Eye Mystery and Fallible History. That is just a brutal start to the story, and I think would have crushed the spirit of anyone affected by so much tragedy in such a short amount of time. I'm just sorry to hear that. Wow. Thing is, who's to say this memory isn't true? We could have lived 1,000,000 times before this, 1,000,000 different iterations of real life. So again, who's to say the memory isn't true? Might just be your soul remembering a memory it's not supposed to, that is suppressed by whatever mechanism is used in the simulation, the real world. So my guess is it was real, just in a different version of the game. And I think there's a beauty in that. Case notes file 1721. The Homespun Goblin Run. So 2 things on this. The first thing is I'm imagining Peter Dinklage running around as a thief. I mean, if he wanted to, no one would believe their eyes that Peter Dinklage is a thief. They would just be so befuddled and flabbergasted that they wouldn't say anything. Who would believe him? But the second note is, yeah, even small people, whatever you want to call them, they still exist. There's quite a few of them around, people like 3 foot tall or something, and there's nothing saying they couldn't be thieves, and given their size, they could fit into places where other people couldn't, so they would be probably pretty good at it too. So you might have just seen a common thief that was uncommonly sized. Case notes file 1722. A day turned tragic, but resolved with magic. Yeah, so you have classic DOP and then duplication, because it did come back when it wasn't supposed to. Also, I'd just say that being able to sew is a very useful skill. My clothes always get frazzled, especially socks, so the ability to just sew them back into place, well, not bad. Which I'm assuming is what crochet means. I'm honestly not sure. I'll have to look it up after, but I'm sure it involves needles and sewing something. Pretty sure. Now time for the joke of the day. What drink is most dangerous to cats? Curiosity. A very rare arcane blend of tea. But yes, curiosity did kill the cat, but I think it's still important to have curiosity. Don't let fear of death rule it out. Case answer file 1723. A stranger's smile from mile to mile. Yeah, so I have the exact same social battery. where in situations, even if I like the people around me, I have to recharge, even for a brief moment, in this case in the bathroom. I don't think you were able to recharge in this case. I would not be able to either. That creepy kind of smile, which I attempted to mimic in the video, smiling, but not with your whole face. Yeah, you can tell right away something is wrong with that. Those fake smiles are just too creepy. Now the question is, was this a real human being that was just tracking you, stalking you? Could be. There are a lot of creepy men out there. But it could also be a spirit that is somehow tethered to you or an object that you always carry with you. And the spirit just happens to be creepy, maybe even malevolent, but again, I wouldn't stress too much about that. Spirits just generally aren't that capable of manifesting in the real world. With exceptions, so be on your guard, but I think you'll be okay. Caissons file 1724. Where did my keys go? Merely gone with the flow? This story had a very matter-of-factly way of writing, and I quite enjoyed that. Just to the point, no extraneous details. Cool. Kind of like how I would write a story, I think. Now, this is of course de-rendered object phenomena. You can say disappearing too, but I think de-rendered is more appropriate. Where the object is in code saved in the hard drive in the real world, simulation servers, but just isn't being rendered for some reason. An error in the reconstruction process. But that all said, I think it's a universal truth, even if we live in a simulation. Honda is so reliable, they'll turn up eventually. Now time for the quote of the day. Ernest Hemingway once wrote, "The world is a fine place and worth fighting for." I agree with the second part. Detective Somerset. Well, I think the first part is can be amended to, the world can be a fine place. It is of our making. With some random chaos tossed in by nature. Which, keeps it fresh and fun. Like the RNG mechanics in RimWorld. You actually want those to be elevated, because otherwise it's kind of formulaic and boring. So yay for randomness, as long as nothing too bad happens. You don't want tornadoes coming through your house, that just sucks. Although from an external perspective, it does make things a bit more interesting. Rather just a peaceful life with plenty of subway. Yeah, we'll go with that. Caissons file 1725. The Night Kilroy Came. A Tale of Fear and Fame. Back in the day, I watched 7 Days and 6 Nights, an old classic 90s movie, or might be 80s, but I think it's 90s, on a VCR in a little camper that my dad had set up behind a house that he was working to build with his brother. And for some reason, that's one of my favorite memories of all time. It's just the vibe. The vibe was everything. The vibe was there. It was camping. The home wasn't built yet. My dad was staying in a different camper, so it was all to me. And yeah, just cozy and fun environment. I like that. Maybe the fondness of that memory is why I so desperately want a homestead and just build an off-grid cabin. There is so much appeal in that. And then watch 7 Days and 6 Nights, the first night I'm there. But this encounter would definitely freak me the hell out, especially as a kid growing up. I think it might have been a spirit that was bound to your grandpa. Maybe something to do with World War II. Maybe your grandpa killed this man. And he was just a soldier, some young boy conscripted in the war and didn't know you until now. Though if that's the case, how did he know about Agnes? Can ghosts do research? I suppose they could, or just spy on you before making a manifested appearance. Or maybe your grandma was even a medic in the war. I don't know. The eyeball scene as you described it, pushing it back in, the sound it would make, oh my god. That is so disturbing. And if spirits can manifest to that extent, where the physical matter can be interacted with themselves, oh boy. That is another level entirely. Though the other thing to speculate on is, it was some kind of supernatural creature that was able to read your mind, the mind of your grandma and grandpa, and replicate something that would tether from their past. But it was a real creature. And I guess in that case, it would just be a creature that wants to terrorize and not necessarily eat you. Which is the better kind of creature. Barely. Caissons file 1726. The Wandering Bit. A Tale of the Little Folks' Wit. Yeah, I understand the OCD inclination. I'm the same way. If something has a spot, then it needs to be in that spot. And if I lose it, it never feels complete. And I'll even want to go buy another one just to make sure things are back in proper order. It's that, I guess, when you realize you don't have total control of the world, the universe, well, you want to act on the things you do have control over, if that makes any sense. And so, I can't affect what's going to happen tomorrow, the weather, the events of the world, but I can control where things are placed in my home. That matters. I think that's what's going on in my brain. Most people who like to have things just so neat. It's trying to push back against the chaos of the world, just a little bit. But I guess sometimes the universe just shouts, no! And then the Ojibwe idea of a little folk, did they end up taking the candy that you placed out? If it was little folk or maybe spirits of some kind? Curious. Now time for the quote of the day. I know you have received orders from our commandant, which he has received from his superiors, to dispose of the population of this camp. Now would be the time to do it. Here they are. They're all here. This is your opportunity. Or you could leave and return to your families as men instead of murderers. Oskar Schindler. Okay, so obviously a quote from one of the best movies ever made. It's not an entertaining movie. It's a masterpiece in documenting and displaying human nature and sometimes some rare sparks in the world that fight against it, even when it's extremely risky for them. You gotta love it. You gotta hate it and love it, actually. Yeah. Case file number 1727. Blink and she's there. Megan's supernatural flair. The idea that a high mental energy area, an environment with condensed mental energy, could be related to these space-time portals. Maybe they sparked the creation of them. In some cases. But it's all accidental, subconscious. No one is directly thinking of it. You know, this even reminds me of Stranger Things with Elle. I won't spoil anything. This is pretty, right at the start. But the idea, of human beings having the ability to affect the world and even into different dimensions. Well, that is certainly an idea that I like. And if true, it makes you wonder if we definitely focused our minds together into a focal point, we could maybe accomplish anything. But I think the most interesting aspect of the story is how, from her perspective, if she crossed these space-time portals, or if it's her ability herself, she wasn't aware of it. It's like you're walking along and then you're just a mile ahead. And you just don't realize it because it's so seamless. There's no sound, there's no visual effect, there's no noise. If you cross these space-time portals, they really do converge different points in space, and it's seamless as walking from one step to the next. That it's just so seamless to me indicates that it is man-made, either through our minds or technology. It's just too perfect to be natural. Case answer file 1728. Twice the pain, a sorrowful refrain. So this is a story of sadness, somber notes repeated out of order. You and your daughter somehow bore witness to a tragedy 7 years before it actually happened. The cause and effect are reversed, or maybe a space-time portal is again in play, and you simply saw into the future, a possible future, but a probable one, in this case, because it really did happen. Maybe some details were different, but you wouldn't focus on those. You would focus on the fact that your mind is blown because this already happened and apparently didn't. How the hell would you react to this kind of event? I know I would, even knowing possible theories on how this could happen. If something major happened to me, and then 7 years later it happened again, my mind would not process that. It's unbelievable, and yet it really does happen to so many people. Incredible. Case notes file 1729. Anger's Echo, the Spirit's Shadow. Prior spiritual attunement. If you direct your mind towards a goal, and you say, yes, if I die, this is what's going to happen. I think you're basically programming your own soul. The fragment that is left behind. Even though in quantum immortality most of your soul goes away, I think there's an imprint of your soul, or a small segment of it that is left behind here. And you can program that little bit that remains to do what you want. If you declare it with intent, with serious vigor, then yeah. So it's almost like a failsafe. If you want to protect someone, although in this case, you can't necessarily command your soul to do something that souls can't do. So you can't have them kill someone after the fact. I don't think that would work. But stick behind and haunt them? Yeah, follow through on the threat. Apparently you can definitely do that. Now time for the quote of the day. Pop quiz, hotshot. There's a bomb on a bus. Once the bus goes 50 miles an hour, the bomb is armed. If it drops below 50, it blows up. What do you do? Howard Payne. From the movie Speed. A true action classic. But I think there's an interesting philosophical debate within this framework, because to what extent can you risk other people's lives to save your own, or even save a whole bus of people? It kind of goes into the trolley problem, but this is more where you're directly involved with the actions and consequences. So it's even more complicated. If you haven't seen the movie, I still won't spoiler it, but you really should watch it. It's such a classic. Go watch it. I know if I was in that situation, I would definitely try to help everyone on board, even risk my own life to do it. It just seems like the right thing to do. But there could be moments, like if the bus is on a track where you can't veer it off, and it's going to crash into people, and maybe even blow up in a mall or something. Do you just sacrifice everyone on board? I don't know. That would be so complicated. I guess until I'm in that situation, which I hope I never am, I can't really know what I would do. Okay, Salts are file 1730. Cemetery Tune, A Mystery by Moon. Does anyone else find cemeteries beautiful? There's an aspect to them that, okay, it's a melancholic note where people died, but it's also evidence that they lived, that so many people came and went. But they had an impact on the material world, and that is something. It's a place to remember people, not mourn them or fear their spirits if any linger behind. Though in this case, I think it was more of a tongue-in-cheek joke that the spirit or spirits in the area were playing. Like, they were perusing the tape and saying, there's a title called Ghost, let's put it on that one, rewind it to that point. Just to mess with, it's like a literally ghost prank tube. If I was a ghost, and all consciously aware, that is what I would do. Prank people, not maliciously, again, always specify that, I wouldn't be cruel, but I would definitely mess with people. So be warned if you ever come into my house after I die. There's going to be shenanigans going on. Okay, Salts file 1731. The cat I adore, who glitched through the door. The fats. The fatties. I definitely laughed too hard too many times. I had to retake that line so many times to get that right. I don't know how people do it. Actors on comedy shows where the lines are so funny. I could never pull it off. I guess there's blooper reels like in Friends where, Monica, Chandler, they're always busting out laughing because it's just too funny. How do actors do it professionally? Impressive. And I think cats are able to phase through all over the place, but I don't think they're aware of that ability. And it can only happen sight unseen. Okay, so it's file 1732. Antique Maze and My Phone's Lost Days. Sounds like a pretty cool shop, one that I would love to peruse. Find those antique lamps. I love the vibe of those old style lamps. Just peaceful. Warm. But I'm honestly not sure of the cause on this one. A de-rendered object, okay, but it reappearing up top there? If it is an error correction code, it applied so quickly. Normally objects don't return that fast. Maybe another spirit prankster? Could be. Now time for the joke of the day. And it's a full story. My little guy is 3.5, and normally his granddad does childcare for us 3 days a week, while I work from home. My dad wasn't feeling well, so I told him to stay home. I'll put in sick and hang out with the little guy today. Daddy and buddy movie day on the couch as soon as we get our chores done. So my little guy helped me take out the garbage and recycling, take the cans to the curb and water the lawn. It was still early-ish morning, but where I live it's already hot by 10 a.m. and the humidity is typically around 80%, so an outdoor sauna. We came back in sweating and I said, "You were a big help, thanks. Do you want anything to drink, buddy?" He tells me no. I say, "Are you sure? It was hot and I'm thirsty." He started to say no, then immediately stops, looks me dead in the eye, and says, "Hi, Thirsty. I'm kid's name. Nice to meet you." I am undone. He is the master of dad jokes. I think I actually startled him with how much I laughed. Dad jokes are wonderful. I hope to have many in my repertoire for when I become a dad. Case notes file 1733. 3 a.m. shout. The mystery voice that went all out. Okay, so definitely a ghost just messing with you, but honestly, it kind of sounds like a horny ghost, which to me, a horny ghost is more terrifying than the craziest demonic ghost you could imagine. I don't want a ghost to be horny. Something about that just freaky. It's like, what could they do? No. Pass. Good. Oh God. Case answer file 1734. Midnight Maid, a family Wade. A spirit is possible, but I actually think this might be an area of the world where I think there's plenty, where the membrane between worlds is limited, and you might actually be able to consistently interact with people on the other side. Maybe even the time of day. Facing the sun makes it more stable, and not facing it makes it less stable. So you could only see them at night. And maybe the girl over there recognized that this wasn't right. I mean, it's not her kid. But still wanted to comfort any kid she saw. But as he got too old, they would stop doing that. I don't know, that's a comforting thought. A spirit is almost mundane, but it could be that. Spirit of a housewife that died there? Sure. If an echo of a spirit produces a cake, can you eat the cake, or is the cake a lie? Important questions there. I would certainly try to eat ghostly cake. Case answer file 1735. Popsicle puzzle, flavors in trouble. So right off the bat, it's super hot here, humid. Nothing would hit better than a delicious popsicle or an ice cream cone. My favorite ones are the crunch variety, where there's chocolate crunch bar on top, and then it's vanilla but caramel in the center. Oh my God, it's so good. That's all I want right now. And you know, come to think of it, I think I've experienced this before. Not as much as this, but it was a duplication event of an ice cream cone. So I knew I had one vanilla and one caramel left. But when I went to check, there were 2 caramels. What's going on? But then when I went back to get the other caramel, it was vanilla again. So I mean, I was really bummed about that. Vanilla compared to caramel, just no comparison. Terrible. Don't do that again, universe. I'm warning you. Case answer file 1736. Feline Mirage, my cat's Matrix Barrage. Some people fear cats, think they're plotting to take over the world. Other people hate them. Other people like them. For me, I just find them kind of fascinating. Even beyond dogs, I think their ability to phase through solid matter just transcends them. I still don't think cats are consciously aware of their ability to do that. It's like with human beings that teleport or pass through a space-time portal. It's so seamless, you almost don't even notice, even though you're in a vastly different place. It's too seamless. The mind almost doesn't even track. So I think that's probably what's going on. The cat is like, how did I get here? But they have no clue about space-time portals or anything, and then go back to their normal routine. Now time for the joke of the day. I was at the dentist's office today, and I needed to reschedule my appointment. I told the receptionist I needed to reschedule, and she asked, how about tomorrow? Sounds good. What time? 2:30, she said. I stared at her, grinning. Are you serious? Yes. Are you telling me I have a dentist appointment at 2:30? This is the best day of my life. She was dying, and we had a great laugh. Perfect. Thumbs up. Case answer file 1737. Dimensional Drift, the Newtown Twist. So, viewers of this channel will know we've been around quantum immortality quite a lot. Hundreds and hundreds of stories regarding it. But this story was special because you just added so many details, and one in particular caught my attention. The fact that you tasted certain foods differently. And this just has me thinking, to what extent can these alternate universes that we zip over to, just our soul, be different? How extensive can they be different? Can the laws of physics be different? Can there be enough differences in the new mind that you now occupy that even your sensory inputs, the decoding mechanism of it, like for smell, like for sight, like for taste, be different enough that you eat the same food and it actually tastes different? I suppose there's no reason these differences can't be so profound. Maybe there's a universe out there where you get zapped to, and celery tastes like chocolate, or cheese doesn't taste evil. And the last one is improbable, but who knows? Now time for the quote of the day. Juno, the best thing you can do is find a person who loves you for exactly what you are. Good mood, bad mood, ugly, pretty, handsome, what have you. the right person is still gonna think the sun shines out of your butt. Yeah, when you find that someone's special, even your flaws and weaknesses and blemishes, they might still be blemishes, but they make up the person as a whole. We aren't just the good parts of us, we're also the flaws. Now, of course, if those flaws harm other people, you want to change them. But if they're just personal deviations, that's okay. They are part of you. Embrace them, and find someone else who also will embrace them. Case answer file 1738. The color switch, a room's curious glitch. So first off, I just want to say green walls, it's not my style at all. Kind of sounds gross, to be honest. I don't think I've ever seen green painted walls. Well, not in a home. I think in a few business places I have, but yeah, pass on that. This glitch though, and nothing fits easily. It can't be quantum immortality because the picture evidence disproves that. You had pictures on your phone when you were looking at the walls being white of them being green. If you were in a different universe, the phone would have shown that they were always white. So, it's not quantum immortality. And if it was an alternate universe glimpse, but you weren't really there, maybe. But those don't usually last long. So if you were there over days and they were still white the entire time, it just seems like an actual technical universe glitch where the actual server you're on, the simulation simply glitched out, maybe failed to load the texture of the wall. Case answer file 1739. Bolt from Blue, a workshop tale told true. When objects are de-rendered, and don't render correctly in their correct spot, but later come back in such an overt flare, extravagant style, like, hey, I'm all the way up here where there's no possible way I could be, and now I'm falling. My gut tells me some mind was responsible for that. They wanted you to be very clear that, yeah, this came back. That the mistake was fixed, almost like an apology, without words. Sorry I messed up, but I fixed it. Case answer file 1740. Invisible thirst from a Gatorade burst. A classic server failure. You go to check the fridge, the Gatorade units are supposed to be there, your husband did put them there, the call was made to the server cluster, but then the error came back, insufficient CPU clusters to fulfill requests in that exact moment. So instead of slowly letting the server catch up, where the objects would render in slowly over a second or something, where you would clearly see it, they block it entirely. If it can't happen fast enough for us to not realize it's happening at all, it ever happens, then it just blocks it out. Because think about it. If an object goes missing that's supposed to be there, we will just naturally brush that aside. We'll say, oh, misplaced it, we just somehow missed it. It's all our fault. It's not because we live in a simulation. The average person would never think that. But if the average person saw their Gatorade materialize in front of their eyes, like fading in, yeah, even an average person, a normal person, would start to question their own reality. Maybe they would start to question their mind more than reality itself, but still. If I was to design a failsafe to guard against people realizing this is a simulation, that's what I would do. If the CPU can't operate fast enough to fulfill the loading request before the person would see it, then it just blocks it entirely, until they are later not there and then it fulfills the request. It seems like the most likely explanation to me. Now time for the quote of the day. Oh yes, the past can hurt, but you can either run from it or learn from it. From the Lion King. The study of the past, the learning of the past, the bettering of your future, the building of your future, really. If you don't know the past, then you're a slave to the future. Now, sometimes people do have such traumatic memories, such pain in their past, that they completely block it out. There are mental blocks placed in by our own subconscious, where things happen to us and our minds simply do not allow us to experience them again. But even then, you still have that scar linger inside of you. There's an interesting point about people who undergo major surgery. Yes, their minds are knocked out during the process. They don't remember anything when they wake up. But there's evidence to indicate that the body still remembers. There's lingering effects from that surgery, even though you don't physically remember. So the body will remember. So if you choose to embrace it mentally or not, doesn't really matter. It's still going to be there. So you might as well embrace it realize that it happened, and try to learn from it. Make sure it doesn't happen again. That's the best bet anyone could have, I think. Case answer file 1741. Legends of the Hilltop Hotel, where shadows dwell. Spectral moth to a flame. That's what I like to call these stories, where people navigate close to, or even inside, abandoned buildings, hospitals, hotels, what name you. And I get it. I have the same appeal to go spelunking in an abandoned cave, abandoned mine, or venture into a supposedly haunted house, just to see for myself. You can watch a tornado on TV, but there's a little part of you, at least for people as deranged as I am, that want to go and experience it for themselves. Like I said, moth to a flame. Although this story ended abruptly, I guess nothing else came from it, but I wonder what the story is of the woman in white. She probably was a real human being that lived a long time ago, and something traumatic happened to her. But maybe we'll never know. Case file number 1742. Ball to bag, the glitchy snag. So I love your thoughts on the matter, and I think you're mostly correct. The one difference, I think, is that the developers, managers of the server are aware that it's becoming more unstable, and they're trying to rectify it as best they can. But if you're working with older hardware that's decaying, maybe the simulation we're on is part of ancient batch, a relic of the past in the real world. And so it just doesn't have the resources to be maintained as much as the newer versions. Now, that's complete speculation, no possible way to know, but infer, as a likely explanation for why things are seemingly becoming more unstable. Now, you're right that the internet enables dissemination of this information, of these stories, much more than without it. And without the ability to come together as a community, people would just dismiss it. If you had a glitch happen 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and you told your friend, well, they probably wouldn't believe you, and then you just wouldn't tell anyone else. Or maybe you'd tell two people and both wouldn't believe you, or maybe they would slightly, but they wouldn't say they believed you because they wouldn't want to be seen as potentially abnormal or crazy. Society was much more constricted back then in what you're supposed to be allowed to think. So I think absolutely there's validity to that. But I also think if you went back a century and somehow brought the internet with you, I don't think there'd be many stories like this. Like DOP and, visiting the only exception would be quantum immortality. I think that's a baked in feature of the simulation. So there would be stories about that. But DOP, objects not rendering, glitches like that I don't think would exist, or maybe very infrequently, maybe one story a year or something. Not the hundreds that we have these days. And more than any story that freaks me out is those dead pixels in the sky. We've only had 3, maybe 4, if I recall, but I think those represent a total cluster failure. Not just a CPU that doesn't have enough resources or something, but an actual hardware failure in the real world. What could be scarier? Wonder what happens if the server fails. Do we die? It's like the Matrix. If you're not reconnected into your mind, then you just die. Probably that isn't true. My guess is, if this is just a game or an experience, a learning experience, I don't think they would design it where if you're loaded in and the server fails, then you just die. No. We probably just wake up in the real world. But still, I like this simulation, so I don't want it to end. Case notes for file 1743. Restroom riddle. The neatly folded middle. Sure, this is a slightly gross glitch, but that's okay. We don't discriminate here. Whatever the glitch is, it matters, it's relevant, even if it's unsightly. But I don't think this one represents an actual glitch, or if it does, it's not a glitch in the classic sense of the simulation actually malfunctioning. I think this represents a will, because you say that these folded sheets keep appearing for you multiple times, and you think, oh, they're just sticking to my clothes or something. Probably not. This could be a spirit pranking you, a kind of very light pranking, this kind of thing I would do, or a manager in the real world just pranking you. I wonder what the rules are on that. How much are they allowed to influence the simulation? I know if I died, all my lives of quantum immortality were exhausted. I wake up in the real world, and then I find out that I'm a manager of the server, and it's my shift now. Well, I will be pranking a lot of people. Maybe getting fired for it. But I won't take it too far, don't worry. Now time for the quote of the day. Some people can never believe in themselves until someone believes in them. Sean Maguire. And I would add that even the people that don't necessarily need someone to believe in them, if people believe in them, it still helps a lot. Like me, I don't think I needed people to believe in me. Back when I started this channel, or in any endeavor I do, I'm okay going at it alone. But when people are around you that encourage you, well, there's no doubt that gives you motivation. If not at least the start, which is the hardest part for most people. Caisson sur file 1744. Vanished in the restaurant as fast as my croissant. I think in these cases where people just vanish like that, it could actually be evidence of the managers of the simulation participating inside the simulation, but with their memories of the real world intact. They just want to come in and observe. Maybe it's like in the Matrix movie. Maybe this detail they got right, where if you're not actively in the simulation itself, you can sort of see the code, but there's no graphical interface. Or maybe there is one, but it's somewhat limited in what it can display. Maybe you need the interface of the mind, the power of the mind, to truly materialize everything in the grand detail that we all experience it. So yeah, maybe some of them just come down into this, our world, to just experience it and us and how we're coping and everything like that. An interesting idea. And those people you see are kind of just empty husks. They will just be gone in a few moments or however long they can remain for to observe us. Almost like aliens, but aliens from a different plane of existence entirely. Actually, what if aliens are hosting us? Maybe this simulation is an attempt to understand humans, but the real world managers are aliens. That's an interesting twist that just occurred to me. Not sure how I feel about that one. It's kind of the Fermi paradox zoo hypothesis, but taken to another level. Caisson sur file 1745. Comics gone astray within a notebook's secret way. You know, I always wanted to have a journal and just write down my thoughts of the day as I go, but never could get around to doing it. I kind of do keep a journal in my mind, obviously not as precise as on written paper. Maybe I should start. This was clear evidence that it really was your journal because you had your own handwriting of your journal notes in there. I don't think anyone could replicate that, not in your handwriting, and especially not in one day. So the only thing to explain the missing comics are quantum immortality. You're in a new universe where you never had those. Simple but still discombobulating. Caisson sur file 1746. AirPods gone, AirPods found, a mystery unbound. So I'm thinking with these DOP events and objects returning after years, maybe it's almost like customer support in our world, where sometimes some tickets get lost in the churn and they get forgotten about until much later on. And then when they're finally remembered, maybe it's years down the road and the person in charge of correcting these, maybe there's just so many and they're swamped, and they finally get to yours and they fix it, but it's years down the road. Though, the fact that one was charged and the other wasn't, I guess that could be an error in how they reloaded it. Maybe that was the case back then when you lost them. One was charged, the other wasn't. Sometimes my earpods don't sit correctly in the case, so one side doesn't charge right. That could be it. They just de-rendered and they re-rendered them exactly as they were de-rendered. Makes sense. Now time for the joke of the day. If I win the lottery, no one around me will be broke, and I truly mean that. I will move to a wealthy neighborhood. You could just give your money away to your friends and family, but there's problems with that. You gotta be careful. I always find it odd that when you win the lottery, it's public knowledge. Over a certain amount, I think. It depends on the state, but yeah. There's a lot of people that come out of the woodwork trying to get your money if you win the lottery. Be very careful. Maybe change your name. Case file number 1747. Symbols in flux and a tattoo paradox. Okay, so that's a really cool concept for tattoos, having them with all your friends and only coloring one symbol based on your age in the group. Really interesting idea. Even though I'm not really a tattoo guy. Mainly it's just a needle. I don't like any sort of needle. If you see an animation of how tattoos are actually encoded or the ink pushed into your skin, that's crazy. No thanks. I'd get a fake tattoo that just fades away, sure. But as you say, your memory of it, with the memory of everyone else, matching yours, is concrete evidence that this really was a simulation glitch. Because I think correcting it would lead to even more questions than if it wasn't corrected. Especially after the fact, after your friends saw it. Maybe if they got to the error before you showed your friends, then it would have been fixed permanently. But because you got to your friends first, they're just going to leave it like that, never fix it. Case answer file 1748. Omen at dawn? The spirit of St. John? Yeah, it just feels like an echo repeating, which I think is what spirits are. They're tethered by trauma or longing for something. Maybe it was the home where you're at now belonged to this person's long-lost love. Maybe they died. Maybe they got married and never consummated the marriage. That would be traumatic, I would say. A lot of potential catalysts for that, but yeah. My guess is probably on the same day every year, or every 10 years on a certain repeating pattern of time, you're going to hear a knock again. Case answer file 1749. Boots on the floor, turning a glitch so hardcore. Yeah, so I'm right there with you, feeling those emotions you described, tearing up writing it, because it's so unusual. And it is experiencing a soul separation, which in my view is what happened. Your brother's soul detached from his body, part of it at least, and projected forward. And you simply were interacting with that soul for a bit. Curious though that the dogs didn't detect this soul. Maybe it's because the soul had no scent. And of course, the alarm wouldn't trigger for the driveway because your brother didn't come back in a car the first time. Interesting. Now time for the joke of the day. At a man's funeral, the widow asked if anyone would like to say a word. The first person stands up and says, "Plethora." The widow says, "Thank you, that means a lot." The next person stands up and says, "Earth." The widow says, "Thank you, that means the world." The next person stands up and says, "Watering hole." A bit confused, the widow says, "I know you meant well." The next person stands up and says, "Totality." The widow says, "Thank you, that means everything." The next person stands up and says, "Dynamite." The widow says, "Thank you, that's powerful stuff." The next person stands up and says, "Nostalgia." The widow says, "Thank you, that's a loving memory." The next person stands up and says, "Embrace." The widow says, "Thank you, that's touching." The next person stands up and says, "Measurement." The widow says, "Thank you, that means so much." The next person stands up and says, "Incomprehensible." The widow says, "Thank you, that means more than you can imagine." The next person stands up and says, "Bargain." The widow says, "Thank you, that means a great deal." The next person stands up and says, "Beer." The widow says, "Thank you, he would have loved that." This one's a thinker. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony signing off.